Ed. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host on Archer Talk 101, and we are talking with Matt Clark, and we're going to find out some cool stuff about Phantom Bowstrings. That's one of the places he works, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you where you can listen to the podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify or any place that you catch your podcast, as well as you can go out to audible.com and search for Archery Talk 101 and listen to it there. That's actually a good way to do it because it keeps you updated when new episodes come out, as well as you can watch the video of us talking, and that you can watch on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as you can go out to Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. That's a good group to join because not only we have the podcast there, but we have archers that are bow techs, instructors. If you have any questions on your bow, send it up. We'll go out there, especially now with we got Matt here. If you have questions on your bowstrings, he's one of the guys that can answer the questions for you and recommend stuff for you, as well as if you have questions on your shooting form, go ahead and take a video and upload your video. Your phones work good on it, have somebody to record you, upload it to the group, and we'll take a look at it and give you some pointers. Well, on to the show. Matt, welcome to the show. How about if you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Roy. As far as archery goes, man, I was introduced to it when I was 14 years old. I won't tell you how old I am now, but let's just say it's been almost 30 years that I've been in the archery game. Realistically, I was taught how to hunt and everything about hunting from my father. And we hunted in the state of Missouri where we're from, and then also we're blessed to have family land in Illinois. And we really just looked at we had a shop. It was actually a gun shop of all places that expanded and became a bow dealer, and kind of got us interested in it. I would say, looking back when I was 14, you would not want to, uh, pick up any of the form that I had back then because it was terrible. But it was a way to extend our hunting season. And really just a lot of what I've done and where I'm at today, it's been self-taught or like what we're doing today, listening to podcasts, watching videos, learning from others, and man, I just continue learning more and more every day. So fast forward, 30 years, and now I'm in the target world. Actually preparing to leave next Thursday to go to Metropolis for the ASA Pro-Am that's in Metropolis, Illinois. And I still hunt, bow hunt pretty avidly in the states of Missouri, Illinois, and in Texas too. I've been hog hunting a few times. So, just been blessed. Have had a lot of trophies in the physical state and just trophies in the mental state of just trips and times well spent with friends and family. And I mentioned my dad and. Now I'm introducing my son to the sport, and it's been great, rewarding, and what a great life it's been. So glad to be on the podcast here today, Roy. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always nice to listen to different archers and get their perspectives and their experiences, and I think it's always interesting, talking to archers, all over the world is, all the same, but we're all different, we're all the same. That's the cool part of archery is it's kind of like a big family, and we all learn from each other, and that's kind of nice thing is we're all willing to help each other out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's well, probably the only sport that I know of that I can go to this pro-am here in a few days, and the people in my group, the people that are around me, everybody's always so friendly. Everybody's always willing. Yeah, we're competing against one another, trying to get to the podium there, but at the same time, we never want to see our competition fail. So if they're having a bad day, and everybody gives each other pointers, or pick me ups, or just it's just great to be around that environment and everybody's so positive. I've never ever met somebody that's negative in that environment. So it's like you said. it's a world of competition, but at the same time, such a friendly friend atmosphere as well, and everybody wants to see each other to succeed and do their best. So,
Yeah, that's something I hear all the time.
yep, it's crazy. It's crazy, but great to be around for sure.
So, what got you started in archery?
Yeah, so again, just the ability to at 14, extending my season, having the access to land that I did. Again, like I said, my grandmother and grandfather had a farm in Illinois, and it was just, spending more time with my father. My very first bow was a Bowtech Mighty Might. If you guys remember so far back, I mean, that's when Bowtech was first getting started, and now look at them today, but. Um, I think I want to say it was a 27 or 28-inch axle to axle bow, so very small. And that was the bow that I hunted with for a few years until just kept building up more and more. Shot different brands over the years. Currently, I'm shooting for PSE under a kind of a pro staff, field staff, if you will, position. And man, just the connections that I've made and the people I've met along the way, and just it's been great. I couldn't ask for any more. But yeah, just man, I hunted and was purely a hunter, bow hunter for probably 25 years. And then, the competitive spirit in me, I played college baseball at one point, very, very grew up in a very athletic family. And then as my age told me, that's probably not smart to slide into bases and hope that you can get up and go to work the next day. Finally it's time to give that up. So I decided to take on archery, and it fills that competitive spirit that I have, but at the same time, like it's a whole new world and it's a whole new ball game. And man, it's such a mental game. And I'm just really, really excited to see how far and how long I can do it. I mean, I truly think it's a lifelong sport. And I kind of look back at it now, wishing I would have started earlier, right? But don't we all?
Yeah, yeah, we do it. Of course, when I started, there was no compound bows.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's been a minute.
Yeah, they didn't design the first one until late '60s. It wasn't until the mid '70s before you could really even buy one.
Okay.
So I can tell you how long I've been shooting.
Yeah. Yeah. For a minute. Yep, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, a couple minutes and then some. But yeah, it's changed a lot from when they first come out, the first compound bows, and then even, you know, 25 years ago, I was a PSE dealer,
Okay.
and yeah, I still shoot the bow I got when I went down to dealer school in 2001. That's my hunting bow, and then I have another one from a couple years later that come out as a PSE, and then all my kids shoot PSE, of course,
Yeah.
and I do have one bear bow. Um, I got it when I was working at Cabela's. We were getting in all the returns that had problems with them and making new ones. And I just bought this bow as I forget what the brand was, in the snow camo. And that time the price tag on that bow was $900. And this has been in 2015, I think it was.
Yeah.
And right now I fixed it all up. It's ready to go. No rest, no sight. Sits in my safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, it's
I
there for
never
when you
set it
need it,
up,
right?
never set it up to shoot it. I just never got. I got it fixed, so I can if I wanted to, but I
Yeah.
just shoot my PSCs, and um, you know, they've been a great bow, and I have no problems with them. And um, what 25 years ago there was some problems with them, like the Nova bows that didn't lubricate the limb pockets well enough, and they creaked. So all
Yeah.
my techs knew to when the Nova bows come in, first do is you pull the limbs off, lubricate the limb pockets, put it back together, tie some string silencers on it, um, and roughly set the rest and the sight. So you're pretty much in the ballpark, and go. It's way to go. And then of
Yeah.
course
Yeah.
I put half dozen arrows with it, and a release, and made a sling and a stabilizer on it. And it might just be the aluminum ones, just a big hunk of metal. But all ready to shoot. And Didn't have to buy nothing, and that way nobody could price compare.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and how far things have come since then, right? I mean,
Oh
just
yeah.
just from that time, and you spoke, $900 for a bow, and now we're pushing. I mean, some of the carbon bows, some of the target bows, are 2 grand or more, and it's just like not everybody can afford that, right? So
No, and that's what, beginners need to learn. New archers need to learn. Don't believe the hype. This bow is not the best. That bow's not the best. Um, they're trying to push, a lot of marketing, and a lot of
yep,
cost you're in. A lot of the bows are marketing. Buy buy something that fits you, even if you go from pawn shop. If it don't
absolutely,
fit you, it's no good. You know, you
absolutely.
can you can take that $200 pawn shop bow that fits you perfectly and a $2,000 target bow that don't fit you at all. Which one you going to do better with? The $200 bow. The
Absolutely.
other one's worthless to you because you can't shoot it.
Yep.
Uh,
No, you're
and then
exactly right.
don't get too into okay, I got to have this sight because this is the best. I got to have this rest. I got to have these arrows. I got to have as the new archer. Don't worry. Buy the inexpensive. Buy everything inexpensive as you can, except your release.
Yeah.
Spend the
Yeah,
money on release.
absolutely. No, I mean, I tell everybody, it's similar to what you're saying, is find a way to get in the game, and then when you love the game and you find a desire for it, and when I say game, I mean, whether you're a hunter, whether you're a target archer, or if you're both, get in the game. If it's something you like, it's just like your first vehicle when you're 16. You probably didn't have the best thing out there, right? Because chances are you're probably gonna find a wreck or bumps or bruises on it, or so, archery is the same way, right? Get in the game, get started, get something in your hands, and when it feels good and it's something that, fuels it's a passion, it's something that you fall in love with, then the natural progression is to improve your equipment over time as you can afford it, and and you get more competitive with the sport, right? So, none of us started T-ball with a 400 $500 composite bat, right? It was usually something that was just enough to get us by. So you're exactly right. It's all about something that fits you. The biggest thing, especially kids and women, I've noticed is, they have to be the ones to adjust and shoot a bow that may not fit them, right? And there are times that that's the case, but if at all possible, find something that has the draw weight that you can, easily draw and without, excruciating pain of trying to get it back, and then something that fits your drawing too. Those two things are must-haves. Otherwise, you're just gonna, I mean, you're gonna struggle, right? And I mean, we've all seen the people that shoot a bow that's too much poundage, draw length's too long, and they slap that inner part of their forearm, and it's a bruise that no one likes to see, right? And then that makes you quit, right? And you haven't even given yourself a chance to get started. So you know, get somebody, a coach or somebody that would be that's been an archer for years that can teach you the correct form, and get started. That's the thing. Just get started. Don't be afraid. Somebody that takes the time to show you is who you need to put yourself around. So absolutely.
Yeah, and find a pro shop that's willing to spend a little time with you, set the bow up for you, and
Yep.
teach you how to shoot as part of buying the bow. They need to teach you the correct form. That's what I did when I sold the
Yep.
bow. It come with shooting instruction.
Yep.
As well as being set up. I'd set it up, and a lot of my setups, so many of them, I can eyeball it and get it pretty darn close. Where most people, even using levels and stuff, aren't going to get any better. And on
Yeah.
a new entry level bow, it don't have to be that perfect setup because your form's not good enough yet. Your skill's not there, and once they get there, just keep improving.
Exactly. And I've even had the conversation with some people that they're like, and we've all been there, right? They're like, I can't shoot an animal. I just don't know that I can shoot an animal. And I tell them, well, go kill foam, right? You can shoot foam all day. You don't have to shoot at a live animal. That's not something that is a must with archery. Just the ability there's something about having that stick and string in your hands and being able to put that arrow at the target and seeing it hit right behind your pin, right? And just feeling accomplished. And then, you start at 10 yards, you move back to 15 to 20, and then next thing you know, you're shooting these 100-yard crazy shots. Then you're like, wow, I never thought that was possible. But yeah, just getting started. Just get started and have something that fits you. And like you said, find a local pro shop. The local pro shops are dying because the big box stores are kind of taking them over, or the internet, right? So if you have a good local pro shop, make sure you give them your time and let them give them an opportunity to help you, right? So
You're going to get some attention at the local pro shop that
yeah,
you're not going to get anywhere close to online, because you just find
absolutely.
what based on the picture. And I've seen some where they say it only been shot a few times, and I can see the string because when I had my shop I made my own strings,
Yeah,
and I can see, no, this string has either never been waxed or it's been shot hundreds of shots, because you can see the foam on it. You
oh yeah,
working for Phantom Bowstrings is gonna know uh, by looking at a picture, this string is worn out.
absolutely,
And you
absolutely.
can wear out a string in a matter of a couple months if you don't ever wax it.
Yeah, yeah, just pure wear and tear. And the number one, repeat offender is a bow case, right? Is the foam or anything that's abrasive. It could be your beard, it could be, the sleeve of the jacket that you're shooting, or just I had a guy that reached out to me and said, why is the string fraying right under the center serving? And then I was like, it's got to be rubbing on something. Well, I don't put it in a bow case. Well, and so we got to thinking about it, brainstorming together. And when he would shoot in between shots, he would leave his release clipped on. He had a handheld. He'd
Yeah.
leave it clipped on his bow. Well, the thumb pad that has the abrasive to grip your thumb was rubbing on his string in that exact spot. He goes, "Oh yeah, that's me, and that's one of my bad habits." And I was like, "Yeah, don't do that, because when you travel, when you're moving around with it, that's flipping back and forth, and I mean, a bowstring is made out of material that moves, right? So
Right.
it's um it's just like the belts in your engine, eventually you have to replace them. It's a moving part, right? It's yeah, there's things like wax that help knock that fuzz down, but yeah, if you're not maintaining them and you're not taking good care of them, they'll last a lot less as long as somebody who was doing it right. So,
Yeah.
but absolutely.
Well, and one of the things, if you insist on doing that, just take that center serve and serve down past where wears on it. Now it's wearing on center serving and not the string.
Yeah, that's
That's one option if he doesn't
yeah.
want to, fix the problem. The
Yeah.
other place I see a problem is those that use the rubber to line the peep. You always have wear around that because that rubber comes in and smacks the string.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like those. But if you don't have a good quality string, it's going to constantly move on you, and the people never line up,
Absolutely.
which is the problem. 20 years ago, the original strings that come on PSEs never stop moving.
Yeah.
So my shooters always thought I have to make them a string before they even set them up. Now I imagine they're a little better.
Oh yeah.
I haven't dealt with the new ones, but they've gotten a little better.
Sure.
Um, but that's one of the things that you have to deal with, because if you're mass producing strings, you're not going to use the high dollar ones, except maybe on your high end bows, because
Right.
the cost of the string is going to be a big part of the bow cost.
Right.
So you're to keep the cost down, you're not going to put the high end strings on there.
Yeah.
Um, but
Absolutely.
uh, you know, talking about strings, you've got some good insight on strings, and I know once you get to a certain level, the string makes a big difference on how you're going to shoot, how things line up. Maybe you could talk about what Phantom Bowstrings does to,
Yeah.
enhance the shootability or the consistency of your bows once you get to that little bit higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll kind of tell you a little bit about how I came across Matt and his father, Mike. A lot of people know his dad. He was one of three custom string builders in the late 70s, early 80s, and still has his archery shop today, still produces bowstrings. Going all the way back, I lived in the Kansas City area. I've moved since then, but just I had issues with like my bow would, it hit left, it hit right. I couldn't get my windage right, and I'd get it going. I like you said, my peep was all over the place. I was just fighting it, and I felt like I could never get it dialed in. And I had at that time, one of the it was a Matthews Monster, the Matthews MR7. So speed bow, obviously, aggressive cams and everything. So you know, my neighbor that lived up the street from me, he's like, there's this guy in St. Joseph, Missouri at the time his shop was there. He's in Cameron, Missouri now. That man, if you go on Archery Talk, he's all over the place, like just about or stuff about him and what he does as far as bow tuning capability, the strings that he makes. So I'm like, okay, sounds like this guy's worth giving a visit. So fast forward, take my bow in there on a Saturday. He picks it up and he's like, "What's your issue?" And he's like, "Well, first off, you need new strings." Well, I wasn't in the position, younger guy, to just buy, a set of strings at that time. So he puts it in his press, gets my peep right, times the bow, does everything that, I should have already had done right. Gives me my bow back. We go to the range, shoot it. It feels completely different. I mean, this guy literally just uh, his nickname is, well, Mike Carter is better known as Crackers. And when he builds your bow and super tunes your bow, he crackerizes your bow, right? And I just was just blown away. And so I'm like, okay, I'll order a set of strings. How long does it take, for those to get done? And when do I need to bring my bow back? So uh, get all that done. He gets me going, to where I'm fine out walking out of the shop. So come back 2 weeks later, puts his string on there, tunes it, and it's like I was thinking about getting a new bow. Like it was frustrating me so bad. I thought maybe this just isn't the bow for me, right? So those questions and doubt and all those things come in. So yeah, he tunes it, and I'm like, I feel like I have a brand new bow. I mean, it's amazing, and I mean just the sound of the arrow and the thump of when it hits the target, and it's just so. Uh, I just really can't explain it. It just changed my whole theory about what when you have a bow that's tuned right, what it should do, right? It aimed better, it shot better, it was consistent, like just great. So. He's been I'd actually travel about 45 minutes to an hour now just to go to his shop, and he's the only one that works on my bows. I mean, I told Mike, I'm like, when you retire, the day you retire, I'm gonna drive to your house and have you continue to work on my bows. And he's like, well, I'm sure we can work something out. Um so as he is getting older and wanting to slow things down a little bit, and people have the way to get his strings are you have to ship your bow to him, if you're from out of state or from far away, with an arrow and all your specs and everything, and then he builds it, sends it back fully tuned. And then if so you can also go into the shop, right, or make an appointment. But his son Matt, who had worked under him for years, keep in mind, Mike, his wife Gail, and Matt were the only three that knew how to build his strings that he's been doing since the late 70s. Um, and I want to say there was like Vapor Trail and one other brand at that time. They were like true custom string makers that still exist today. I know Vapor Trail is still around, but so. Matt mentioned to him, he's like, you're missing so many people nationwide that don't want to ship their bow to you, that maybe do their own stuff or have their own local pro shop, but they want your strings. And Mike was like, that's just not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to deal with people, cutting my strings with the peep and then I have to warranty it or they don't install them correctly. I don't want to deal with that headache. So Matt's like, well, what if I did? And he goes, well, go for it. And so that's literally how Phantom Bowstrings came about. So a lot of pretty much exact, I don't know all the build secrets. For sure, I don't know them because only, like I said, only three people know them. But there are certain things with their building techniques and things that they do that are different than your the many other hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands that are out there. There's been people that have tried to like undercover buy Mike strings and break them down and figure out how he does the end loops. They're a tagged end loop, so there's no knots. They serve from the loop instead of to the loop, they serve from the loop down, so there's absolutely like no knots. And it's one of the smoothest transitions in that cam. Um, and that's where you hear about people saying that their string stretches. It's usually fault or that knot by the cam rotating over and over after thousands of shots it gives a little bit, right? Like the material is so good from BCY and Bloodline, who most manufacturers use. It's so good today that string stretching really isn't a thing. Like strings don't really stretch. They have a fault around the loop. And so anyway, they do that. They serve with what's called a wand instead of a jig spool. Many people have no idea what that is. That's a custom thing that Mike built to where it constantly has 10 pounds of pressure when he serves the string. So literally like one of the best, cleanest serving jobs you'll ever see. And it's stuff that when you get your strings in a package, you see it, but then over time, when you shoot these bows with aggressive cams and they break down that serving, um, it's not going to happen with theirs because there's no inconsistencies of a jig spool, can wad up over time, after when you're serving, it can wad up and then you fix it. So you may have 10 pounds of pressure up to where it wadded up and then it's eight and then it variates, right? And you can't see that when you buy a string.
Right.
Um, so there's sayings that they do there. They twist their the way that they twist their strings are the same way that they come from the mill. So before BCY dyes the strings, when they come in a mass uh, ream, whatever you want to call that, um, what we would call like a natural string color, before they put them through their dye process, if you take that under a microscope and you look, um, it's going to have a natural left twist to it from the specific individual fiber. So the way probably 9 out of 10 string builders today build with a right twist. Um, Now, what does that do that's different? I think one of the other main manufacturers out there that I know that also twist left is like ABB, America's Best Bowstrings. They figured that out too. I mean, that you're going with the flow of the fibers, the way they come from the mill versus going against it. So it's an abrasion thing. It reduces that bundle and gives you like more durability, life of the string. Um, Not only that, but for hunters that want an arrow that or a beveled. A lot of people shoot with a right beveled fixed broadhead. Um, and so that the way that they build that string, it naturally spins your arrow to the right, making that right beveled fixed blade broadhead, go naturally. It spins naturally that way. So those are just a few things. And Matt has linked up. Man, he worked for probably 2 years with Bloodline, and I don't know if you're familiar with Bloodline material. Um, Mark, who is the owner and founder of Bloodline, basically saw a gap in the market that the only string manufacturer or material that people were using most generally today, not talking about compound bows, not your traditional bows, was BCY, right? So 452 extra now has been the staple of the industry, and it's a waxed. They have a low wax version, and there's lots of companies out there that try to reduce the wax because it's weight, right? So Mark came up with a formula um, Don't know what's in it, but it's used as a lubricant even in parts like for Polaris with their UTVs, four wheelers, motorcycles, and things. Uh, and it's a waxless coating that he puts on the string material itself. So your bowstrings are virtually waxless. They're fray resistant, waxless. They hold their color. Man, their colors are great and they pop. It's they're waterproof, and I mean, he truly came out with a revolutionary type of future bowstring, right? So anything that comes to the market, as you know, that's odd or different, right? People automatically throw the red flag up, right? Like this can't be true. It's probably not gonna, stand the test of time. It's a trendy thing, So Matt decided, hey, I'm gonna test this material. I'm gonna test it for like 2 years. He tested it before he sold any strings making it. And we were able to provide some feedback. The substance, the goo coating, it was pretty heavy when he first started, producing this material. And we told him you need to cut back on that, right? Because around the cam tracks and everything, it was just clamming up, and um, it served its purpose. But then bowstring makers, it's this slimy stuff that they don't want to deal with it, right? Because it's all over your fingers and everything. So we've had a really good relationship with him. He's expanded his business a ton, and yeah. So if you haven't had a chance to look up Bloodline bowstring material, and then like I said, they are a direct competitor of BCY. Um, they're both in the same market, but it allows you to not have to wax your strings. And I mean, we've got kids, I mean myself too. I hate waxing my bowstrings. It's just one of them things like, man, I really got to sit down and clean them and wax them. Um, and it eliminates all that, right? So it gives you another option. They're not necessarily better than BCY. Like I said, BCY has been the staple for forever and ever. It just gives you another option, right? So rewinding back to my point, Phantom starts his own business. Matt had worked under his father for like 20 years, helping him during busy seasons and whatnot. Um, Starts his own business, fully offers BCY material and bloodline. So kind of cook's choice or archer's choice, if you will, as far as what material you want him to build your string with. And it's all accessible through his website. And we've actually, and so I met Matt through his dad, Mike. And one of the things when we were talking business, I'm like, the lifeblood of your business is word of mouth, right? Marketing's great, but word of mouth marketing, you can't match that, right? So, um, he dabbled and he started getting some dealers, having some dealers, like their pro shop shooters, techs at the pro shops shoot for him, but it still just wasn't clicking. And I'm like, we really need to have a pro staff. So I told him, and it's fully a work of what do I say, a labor of love. It's an Matt and I, he does a lot of nice things for me, and but it's a position that I took on because it's a passion. Get to work with people that love this sport, and I absolutely love his brand and his builds. And so we're up to about 160 people now on pro staff, and I know that doesn't sound like much, but 2 years ago it was zero. So I've been doing this a couple years, and man, just the people that I've met along the way, and man, there's archers of all shapes and sizes, right? And then if there's a lot of people that don't want to promote or feel uncomfortable with promoting. We also have like on Facebook, it's called Phantom Members. And that's just if you love the product, you can go on there and just be part of a group. And I think that's getting up there. I haven't had a chance to look at it in a minute, but it's really growing as far as the numbers on there too. But ex excellent product. What I would tell you the difference between any custom string versus your factory string is the easiest way I can relate it is when you buy a vehicle, right? The manufacturer is going to put on tires on that vehicle for instance, I drive a Toyota Tundra. They put like highway tread on my Toyota Tundra, which drives me crazy, right? And I drove them until it's time to replace them. Some people want to rip them off right then and there, but they're there to serve a purpose to get you through. But if you're truly going to be off-roading and winter and snow and all of that stuff, you really want to get an aftermarket tire that fits the build of that truck and lets it maximize its performance, right? So that's what a custom string is going to do for you. Your string that you get on the bow when you buy it, yeah, you just dumped a lot of money on that bow. But most generally, that bowstring is going to be made by we'll just say, I won't say a robot, but I'll say like it's maybe not man-made, right? So all of the specific things that go into the care and feeding of a custom string really aren't there. It's just mass produced. It's get you out the door and it'll get you by. Like for most people, it'll get them by maybe a year, 2 years, depending on how much you shoot your bow. If you pick it up just during hunting season or whatever. But if you're somebody that's truly looking to maximize the performance, you want to have something that, like I said, makes that bow feel different. Um, maybe you pick up some performance as far as speed, longevity. You're definitely going to get a longer lasting bowstring. Um, you know, when I buy a bow now, I rip the factory strings off it immediately and put, phantoms on because I and I'm not saying you have to have a phantom bowstring. I'm saying a custom string, if it's made by a reputable builder and somebody who really knows truly what they're doing with string building, it's going to last you a lot longer, and you're going to really see that benefit of what it can do to your bow. And you talked about too, like fighting, you won't have the peep twist, you won't have the crazy peep rotation, and you won't have, I always tell people when you're towing the line and that shot you need to make, or that huge monster buck walks out in front of you, the last thing you want to do is draw your bow back and you can't see through your peep because it's sideways. Or, I constantly see people moving their peep with their mouth, or every time they get up to draw their bow, they twist their string before they draw it back. With a custom string and a good quality custom string, you're not going to have to do that, right? So it's peace of mind. So anyway, that's my long-winded story of where I'm at today, and like truly, truly, and the Carters have been great to me. And again, if it's not Phantom bowstrings that can service your bow for a custom string, I absolutely recommend. Now that I know more about it, it's money well spent. It's peace of mind, it's confidence, it's you know, man, when you really need to make that shot happen, it's consistency, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the things you said is kind of similar to what I do when I make a string. I have to have the bow with me
Yep.
because I'm going to find out what the bowstring's supposed to be, the correct length of the strings and cables.
Yep.
And then I'm going to look at how the original one was served. Some of them, they don't serve all the way around, so the cam is hitting unserved string.
Yeah.
So I'm going to serve it a little bit further so that the string is protected by the serving on the cam. And then others, they've served it 4 inches further than what it needs to be.
Right.
That's
Right.
serving you don't need,
Right.
shorten it down. So I custom fit it that way, and then custom colors. And I do mine a little bit different. Mine is continuous loop. If I do two colors, all of them are knotted together. So I'll tie a little knot when I change colors. And when I get back around to the last one, I'll tie those together and then I put them in pressure. So I stretch them out so they're all the same length. That way I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about, okay, this one's slightly shorter than this one. And I have more pressure on one color than the other. And, over the years, I've learned how to get the colors to stay separate.
Yeah.
The first one's like, okay, these are all intermixed. And then I finally figured out how to do that. And so I put them under a lot of pressure before I even serve anything.
Yeah.
So I don't pre-stretch. I use BCY's 8125 is what
Okay.
I use.
Yeah.
I
And
think
you're
when I
shooting
started, 452 wasn't even out yet. I don't think when I started, 25 years ago. I
and
don't
you're
know
still
if it was
shooting
even
like a
out yet.
traditional type setup, right?
Yeah, it's for
Yeah.
compound. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I use the B500 for traditional bows.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't think they even do 500 anymore because last time I looked for the number of strands, it's like they're not showing us because they quit making that number.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I look on the old chart, but it's kind of pretty much the same. But um, yeah, I always had to have the bow with me. I'm not going to make a string just randomly try and make it because I don't know for sure, all those little things and then like when you run into like Dartons, their track is skinnier than everybody else's. So you have to drop two strands down because it won't fit in there. And
Yeah.
I did that one time. And that's the thing about custom when I had in my shop is you can call up and if I wasn't interrupted within an hour, you got your strings all made and ready
Yeah.
to go out the door. Um, I actually had a guy do that one to call me up just before we close and this, oh, can you come tomorrow else? No, I got a tournament tomorrow. Okay. So he walked in and being a dart and I made the string, served the one in and like too big, threw it away, started over, and then cut the strands down. Okay, fits real good, made all done. It was like 45 minutes and he was out the door with new string.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lot of people you mentioned something there that's a good point, like stretching, pre-stretching strings, right? So the material has gotten so much better than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But absolutely, at Phantom, all the strings are pre-stretched. And there's a load that we talk to the manufacturers, right? That some people surpass it, some people don't, but it's kind of like your rev line and your engine, right? Like
Right.
anything over what is it, like 5,000 RPMs usually on most vehicles, you start hitting the red, right? So always, 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 if you feel confident in building your own string, call the manufacturer, ask them, what do I need to set this to as far as poundage and how long do I stretch it for? So we've worked with Bob over at BCY. He's one of the two owners, and I mean, he's excellent. And just talking with him, I mean, he's a wealth of knowledge, right? I mean, he's seen it all. He's been around forever and ever and ever. But Bob and then Mark at Bloodline have been great. And just when you go to stretch your string, again, for talking to the people that try to do it themselves. There's no reason to leave it on the stretcher overnight. There's no reason to, if it's 200 pounds, I'm just going to throw it out there, 200 pounds that you stretch your string. There's no reason to up that to 400 because you think that you're making it better. There gets to a certain point, if you're putting too much load on that material, you're going to break down the fiber. So definitely go with what the specs are that the manufacturer recommends, because 452 is going to be different than like you said, some of the other materials that BCY offers, or Mercury, right? Or different ones that they have. They're all a little bit different. So yeah, it's a process. And everybody wants you made a good point. Everybody wants their string now, right? But um, you're gonna wait a week, 2 weeks sometimes, especially if it's during in the middle of bow season for hunting. Don't wait. I would tell you, if you're thinking about getting a string, get it now. When these manufacturers get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks and beyond, that kills your season. And I mean, really, if you haven't had a chance, if you've had a bow for a couple years, I mean, we're talking material, right? We're talking things that move. Like over time, it breaks down. So if you're ever in question, do I need to change my string? You probably need to, right?
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome. And I think, yeah, like Bowtech and I think Elite now, I mean, everything's usually Matthews is a 24 strand string still, from the factory, but yeah, Bowtech Elite, I think, is now a 22 strand. So, there's companies that they vary, right? So knowing all that, when you're building strings, knowing where the speed knocks go, knowing all of, like you said, your string links, your cable links, making sure that those are spot on. What cam number? There's like PSE and the older Hoyts. Oh, and there's some other ones like Obsession. That's a company that Martin Obsession. I mean, you can buy one bow with six different cam options, right? So knowing that, most of it's on your limb, when you go to look on your bow, or if you don't know, like snap a picture of it, send it to whoever you're wanting to have build the strings, because if like for instance, we talked about PSE, if you have a EC2 cam, you can also get a S2 cam and E2 cam, it goes on and on, right? And so that changes your string length. And you don't want to have the wrong thing, because then you're waiting, to get a replacement, and who wants to be out, right? So, but all those things are important. And for people that don't know what you have, that's a common thing, just call up. You can call up Phantom and be like, I'm about to place this order. There's a number on this cam, but I don't know where to look. Like, I mean, we could even FaceTime, right? Or, just to see the video and show you where to look. But all that stuff's important. But I'll tell you, again, having a custom string, man, I the first time I did it, I didn't realize what I was missing out, and then I knew from that point forward, it's a must have. So definitely a thing to do if you want to if you're serious about. And I mean, even if you're not serious about performance, you talked about colors, right? I mean, who doesn't want to walk out of the wood? No, I was gonna say, some people they've gotta have their bright pink strings or fluorescent orange or yellow or whatever, and that's fine. But to each their own. And but it does allow, it's that custom. It adds to that custom feel, right? And what is it? The old saying, look good, feel good, play good. I don't know.
Yeah.
So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it definitely adds to the appearance, let's say. So,
Well, and that way you can pick, whatever colors you want, because I think BCY has probably 20 different colors you can pick from.
oh, more than
Uh,
that now. Yeah,
or more. Yeah,
it's
it
gotten
used to
crazy.
be not many, but now there's
Yeah.
all kinds, and then depending what material you use,
Yep.
like the 452s, they're thinner materials, so you use more strands. The 8125 is like 12 to 18 or something like that, is the range depending on what, weight you're doing for draw weight. So it's a little bit thicker, so you don't use as many strands. Some of the new ones are thinner, so you use more strands. And, is it good or bad? Who knows? The
Yeah.
material's
Yeah.
good, but you can pick your colors. And then when I had my shop, I only bought raw shafts. I didn't buy anything fletched. Nothing was cut or fletched. Nothing
Yeah.
was pre-made. So you pick what color veins you want or what color feathers you want. A little bit more expensive for feathers, but what color you want. Pick your colors. It doesn't matter. And same thing, pick your strings if you want your strings and cables to match. And now if your bow is like an all black theme and you wanted a black string, I'd make you a black string. But so he'll come in and say, "Oh, what color? Oh, black's fine." No, pick
Yeah.
two colors. You can have two colors, not black.
Yeah. Yeah. And blacks,
Yeah,
it, it,
black's
it can
boring.
get it gets all over your hands too. That's something about that dye, it's well, I call Matt, and he tells me when he goes to UPS to ship every day, they know what he does now, because he wraps athletic tape on his fingers, right? And he doesn't take them off when he's going to ship, his orders for the day, because he goes back and continues to work. But he walks in there and he's got all these colors of dye and everything. He's like, and the thing is, if somebody orders a white string, you have to take all of that off, because that'll all transfer and get that white. So he's like, while a white string looks great, it's also a pain in the butt for him, because he's got to make sure everything's clean. So,
Yeah.
but they know. They're probably like the first week or two. He said, if he gets a new person there, they look at him when he walks in there like, you've got all this tape on your fingers. What do you do for a living? And then they eventually know, okay, yeah, quit asking questions. So we know what this guy does. So, But yeah. No, and I've got I mean one of my PSCs here, I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll try to get in there close, but
It's like a green and white.
yeah, so it's really hard to tell, but and I'll show you just a few features, but this is BCY Seafoam and this is made out of their 452 extra. Um And then obviously I had an orange, D-loop made, and then the serving on it is a clear serving, but then the center serving, you probably can't tell, but it's BCY silver, which looks gray. Um, so when you talk about color coordination, the gray center serving matches the gray riser. And then I'm a Miami Dolphins football fan, so don't hate me, but the seafoam is going to match, their teal or aqua, whatever you want to call that, right? So kind of just had him do like a theme, but yeah, you'll see people. I mean, you see a lot of people in that do like red, white, and blue themes for patriotic, and I mean, it's just truly is makes your bow really pop, and it's kind of cool. So, but
And it gives you a unique look that your bow only has that look.
make it your own, right? That's
Yeah.
exactly right. One thing that on colors though is, and I'll mention this. It's popular now with some of the string builders that'll do like they call it a pinstripe. Um, Matt and his dad will only do two color strings. I like solid colors. I don't know, that's just me. But as far as the twist, two color strings, because if you think of how the fibers and when you're stretching it and all of that, you know, to reduce the inconsistencies of things like peep twist and just failure of the string overall and how it stretches and everything. The consistency is going to be there with two colors. When you start adding a third color and the pinstripes, I'm not saying that it's guaranteed that it's going to happen, but you're inducing more risk for things like peep twist, peep rotation, things like that to happen. So they will just do a two color string, but you can change your serving to be whatever you want. Like you could do a I don't know. I'm bad example here, but you could do a yellow and white twisted string with black serving, so you can make it three colors, or you could do your cables a different color than your string or whatever. But ultimately, on the string or on the cable, before you talk about serving, just two colors is all they do. So anyway,
Well, and normally what you're going to do on your peep is you're going to have one color on one side and a color on the other side.
right.
Now, if you do three colors, now you have split one of the colors in half because you can't put two colors on one on the other because now your peep's not there. So you'd
Yeah,
have to go to four colors to be able to do that.
yeah,
And then making a four color string is not always the most fun thing to do. I did one on on my bow. I did a four color one. You really couldn't tell, but I actually braided the string.
oh, nice.
You know, to I no, I think I just did three colors, but I braided it like you would normal braiding,
Yeah,
hair or whatever. I just braided them, and it was kind of cool. And then you twist them, and kind of made a unique string that no one had. Because I don't
yeah,
know if anybody's ever braided their string. Uh, well, for one, you have to use it's a different amount of string. It has to be longer to start with, because in the process of
yeah.
braiding it, you shorten it up. I also did one where I twisted two inside each other, twisted the outside, and then we put them back together. They form little V's.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
and
I
that
mean, when
that
you
actually
start,
saved a bow because it ended up at a shop and it says, okay, it's got a red and white string to form little V's and the pattern. It's like, oh yeah,
yeah, when you start inducing all those other colors, yeah, taking it to a pro shop and obviously, we put the little piece in there that separates the string perfectly so you know where to put your peep and everything. But you're right. I mean, when you have all those colors and the pro shop's like trying to figure out and counting the amount of strands to make sure they've got it right in the middle as far as your peep. Hey, you're not making friends at the pro shop when you do that. But
no,
yeah, it looks cool, but yeah, functionality maybe not so much. So
yeah. I did each of those strings one time, just because it'd be different. I was
sure,
making the
sure.
strings and the one was for me, and then I didn't care, so I just figured it out and went
Yeah.
with what we had, and
Yeah.
counted them all out. And this is like one time back when we were shooting aluminum arrows before they even had carbons. And I said, okay, if all my arrows weigh exactly the same, they're going to leave at the same speed. So they should group a little bit tighter. So I was shooting a double X 78, which is a 1,500 straightness, which is the straightest aluminum you can get at the time.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I cut my arrows to length. I glued um, I didn't glue it. I put the knock in because it's with the glue it, just the press in ones. And then I cut them to length. And then I weighed the shaft, and I weighed out all the points, so I had the weight length on the weight on each one of my tips, because I used to get them in 100 bags, so I just
Mhm.
weigh out the shaft, and then weigh the insert, for the tip, and then I'm filing stuff off the insert to get the total shaft weight. So I
Hmm.
got a whole dozen arrows within a half a grain of each other,
That's good.
and never did it since. Because it doesn't really make that much difference. And if somebody wanted to have me do it for them, I would have charged double what the arrows would have cost normally just to do all that weighing.
Yeah, if not triple.
Just
Yeah.
and yeah. So instead of being 36 a dozen for the arrows, it'd have been three times that,
Yeah,
and you'd have been $100 for the set because the time it took to do that.
absolutely.
And did it make any difference? Probably not, because in aluminums, after you shoot them for a couple hundred times, they're not going to be consistent anyway. Because how do you break aluminum? You keep twisting it. What do you do
Yeah.
when you shoot an arrow? You twist it. You flex, constantly flexing it. So I'd get a new set every year, and amazed how much tighter my groups when I got my new arrows. They
Yeah.
start loosening up, and I can keep them in the white. That's about it. Get new arrows. Now I'm back into the X zone.
Yeah.
And that's just difference in straightness. And
Yeah.
with carbons, it's nice because they're pretty consistent on their weight and everything else. And now you get the 1,000 straightness carbons,
Yeah.
and it makes a difference on that too.
Yeah, I've had some guys
Between a
tell me,
three and a one, can make a difference of maybe half inch to an inch in diameter of your pattern or your grip.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I've had some guys tell me too that they believe, whether it's true or not, that I mean, we're talking over thousands of shots that even the carbon arrows, the target arrows, because they're a lot thinner, the walls, they've told me, oh, they feel like same thing what you're saying after they've shot them for a while and their groups start, and then they get a new dozen and they're like tight again. It's almost like they said, like they're shooting the spine out of their target arrows. Again, I don't know if I probably don't shoot enough to as many as this guy that was telling me this, but there's a lot of truth to it, I mean, that's a lot of pressure that's being put on that arrow and the flex over and over again, right? So it makes
Yeah,
sense.
I've heard that too. But these are guys that are shooting, easily shooting each arrow 1,000 times.
Yeah,
Um, you know, we're shooting hundreds of times each arrow, and aluminum, it affected it. And your carbons, maybe shooting 1,000 each one, and so it is better, but still,
yeah,
um, after a while, you would think you should probably change arrows anyway.
right.
Just because they've been shot so much and then banged, and you check them out, flex them, make sure they're okay, and
Yeah,
after a while that if you shoot that much, where you're shooting each arrow like 1,000 times, and you got a dozen arrows, that's 12,000 shots you've
it's a
put in.
lot. It's
And
a
if you put
lot.
in that much, you really should be try changing your arrows once a year if you're shooting that
Yeah,
many a year.
agreed. Agreed. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, safety reasons, like you said, and just accuracy reasons, right? So,
Well, and you don't want that arrow breaking when you shoot, because that
oh,
normally means it goes through your arm or your hand.
yeah, that means you're going to the hospital for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some nasty happenings to people. Man, knock on wood, it's never happened to me, but yeah, yeah, not a good thing.
No.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you definitely want to watch your equipment. And I used to tell, all my archers come in, especially those that hunt, wax your string every time you go out hunt before you go out, the night before or something. And the biggest reason, not just to get wax on the string, but to get your fingers on the string. Because you're going down and you feel a little knot or something, you're going to feel it in your fingers.
Yeah,
And now you're basically what you're doing is you're with the wax on, you're checking out the string to make sure you don't have any burrs or anything. And that's the biggest reason. And most people don't wax their string enough anyway.
sure.
Back then I have a story I used to tell you. It's like, don't be afraid to use the wax. You're going to lose it before you ever use it up. I
Yeah.
told that one guy he forgot it on the counter when he left. He come back in and said, "You forget you lost your string already, did your wax already, didn't you?" Yeah, here it is. You left it on the counter.
Yeah, definitely wax it if it's starting to show wear, and maintain the string so it like I said, holds up. I mean, we're all shooting now, and it's starting to get. Man, I looked at the forecast. We're hitting 90s now. So the string's gonna act different now versus when it's 10 degrees out, right? So, and that's one thing too that Market Bloodline, and really not promoting his product by any means over BCY, but not having that wax does give you the consistency of, well, one, not having to wax it, but then also two, it won't change in the temperatures, right? Where wax, when you heat it up, when you get it cold, it's changing consistencies, right? So
Yeah,
it's nice to have options now, right? I mean, technology has changed so much. I mean, even since when I started, right? And I mean, you nailed it. It's just we're just nailed over and over again with marketing and there's a lot of gimmicks out there. I hate to say it, but there is. But
yeah,
shoot what works for you, not necessarily what works for your buddy, and that goes not only just the brand of the bow, but your rest, your arrows. Like we're all friends in this industry, right? Shoot what you score the best and what you hunt the best with, and you don't have to be right all the time, right? Shoot what it works for you because your next door neighbor, your friend may shoot something, a brand completely different, and it works for them. And I when people ask me, well, what do you shoot? I'll tell them, but I'll also encourage them going in a pro shop. If that pro shop carries 4 or 5 brands, shoot every single one of them because at the end of the day, don't buy a certain brand because you want to be like me or whoever else. I hope you don't want to be like me because that would mean you're not a great shooter. No, but shoot what you can walk out of there and shoot confidently and it fits you well. We talked about that earlier. And ultimately, it's your money. It's not my money. It's your money. So buy something that 3 months, 6 months, a year later, 2 years later, right? You're still happy with that purchase and you're not, you don't have buyer's remorse and go, man, I bought what Matt shot and man, I just don't like it. It just doesn't fit me well. Well, you should have bought what you liked. So,
yeah. I actually I've told this story several times, but back when I had my store, 2001 and 2004, um, PSC had bought Browning Archery,
hmm
and the Browning engineers had come up with a dual cam at the top, counter rotating cams. The idea was they're rotating opposite directions. They're going to reduce, recoil. Back then, most of the limbs are fairly straight. They're not like the parallel limbs you have now. So there's a
yeah,
lot of force forward. And I tried to set that bow up for me many times, several times. Could not get it to fit me where it felt good in my hands, and I wanted to shoot it. It's like this was
yeah,
cool. I wanted this bow, and
yeah,
I could not get it to fit me. And it fits somebody else, and I forget who I sold to now, but that's been 20 some years ago. But
yeah,
it did not fit me. I couldn't get it to fit me no matter what I did. So how much I wanted to shoot it didn't matter because I know it needs to fit me. I can't fit the bow. The bow has to fit me. And
yeah,
that's the way you should always put the bow in your hand. If it don't feel good in your hand, put it back. It's not the bow for you.
absolutely.
And I've even gone as far as one time I had a guy in there could not make a decision. I had like 6 bows in the range, could not figure out which one he liked. So I said, okay, I'm going to hand you a bow, with your eyes closed. You're going to shoot it. I'm going to take it away, put a note in your hand, and you're going to shoot it. And so he did that. I said, which one do you like better? Oh, I like the first one better. Why? And then he'd tell me. I didn't care what the reason was. I wanted him to
Yeah.
tell me. So I put the number two bow on. Then I gave him two more. Which one do you like better? Okay. Which one do you like better? Finally got down to the one bow that he liked the best because he shot with his eyes closed. He did not have the idea that I like this bow better. I like this bow. The way it looks is all by feel.
Yeah.
And if you don't have somebody that knows how to help you with that, shoot with your eyes closed because you can't just go back 20 yards and shoot with your eyes closed. You got to be
Right.
fairly close and you got to have somebody watch and make sure nobody walks in front of you because you'll never know because your eyes are closed. And, that's a good way to practice too, a new form and technique. That way you can feel what it feels like. And I used to take and I'd have them draw back, get their anchor point, everything all ready. Okay, put your finger above the trigger and do not pull it. I says, you're not going to pull it. All your job is do is aim. You store the energy and aim. And then I'll pull the trigger. And of course, the front hand explodes forward or back and explodes back.
Hmm.
And most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, they hit what they're aiming at.
Yep.
And I says, that is what it should feel like every time. You feel that every time, you're going to hit that spot every time.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
now they know what a good release feels like. Now they're shooting, it's like, oh, I didn't feel it. Something went wrong. And then they adjust and adjust. And next thing you know, because they know what it should feel like.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and you see so many people and hear so many people that suffer from target panic, right? Because they think their mind says, I've got to hit that, I've got to put my pin right there and I can't move and it's got to hit that specific spot. Um, and I mean, I could go on and on and on about that, but you mentioned it, like drawing your bow back, knowing you're not going to fire it, closing your eyes, just feeling it's okay. It's okay to not shoot my bow and let down, and do it, practice your letdowns like 10 times, right? And then maybe 20
Right.
times. And maybe never maybe do it. That's your evening routine is draw your bow back and let down 20 times to kill your target panic. And then maybe you get back 10 yards, right? And you're just trying to hit the bail or whatever you're shooting at and not worried where that pin's going to go. And you're just feeling the pull of the release and the follow through, right? Um, but so many people get tied up in, I've got to hit that. And then, their brain says, I've got to hit that. I got to lock in on that. And then they can't let it go. And then it's boom, they're punching that trigger. And I mean, we've all seen that trigger puncher. And I mean, we've all been there too, right? And we've all experienced target panic. It's a horrible thing to get past, but, um, letting your brain know you don't have to fire that bow, you can let down is probably one of the biggest tips that I can give with target panic, right? Is um because I think we as archers think when we draw back we have to fire that bow, right? And it's okay to let down. It is. So,
Yeah. Well, and I just tell them this, if you pull the trigger, you're going to eventually get target panic.
hmm.
Quit pulling the trigger because every time you pull the trigger, you're forcing fire. And two
Yep.
things happen. One, you're thinking about the finger because you cannot make that finger move without thinking about the finger.
Yep.
If you don't think about the finger, you can't make it move. But you can pull back with your, like the back tension release.
Yep.
You can do that while you're still aiming. It's just that moving that index finger. And, that's going to cause target panic. And one of the things that I like to explain how target panic is going to work is you're looking at the pin, your fingers above it, ready to pull the trigger, and you see that pin cross the target, and your mind says, shoot now. You
Yeah.
start moving your finger, the pin moves, don't shoot. And you jerk. So you're starting to pull, and then you jerk. And next thing you know, you can't do that, or you're just slamming on the trigger. And
Yeah.
if you're not pulling the trigger, move the trigger on, if you're using a caliper release, move it back to the second knuckle, not on the tip of the finger, and let your hand just roll around it, little pressure on it, and start pulling. And
Yep.
aim and pull and pull. And you're going to aim, 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 and it'll eventually go off.
Yep.
And, that's how you're going to get away from it. And like I said, shoot with your eyes closed so you have no idea what's going on. When I first learned back tension release, that's how we did it. Eyes closed, shooting, bend forward, grab the arrow, pull it. Back, shoot, pull. And
Yeah,
if you're practicing drawing and letting down, always have an arrow in it.
absolutely.
Always have an arrow in it.
Absolutely.
Because if you make a mistake and you hit that trigger, and one of the things that finger shooters switching to a release, they're going to have that finger over that trigger as they're drawn, and they're going to make a fist. And they're going to pull the trigger. I got a buddy of mine that did that. And he says, it just went off. It's like, no, you pulled the trigger. No, I didn't. Your finger's in front of the trigger and he's drawing it. Yeah, well, you pulled the trigger. Put the finger behind the trigger so you cannot accidentally pull it
Yeah.
and pull through, and then put your finger on it and relax your hand.
Yeah.
And um, I shoot a handheld. I got a Carter chocolate addiction that I use. I took that knurled knob. I took it off. It's sitting in a drawer someplace. I don't need it. I don't want it because it doesn't help me in firing. Because I don't use my thumb to actually fire it. I actually bury it into my hand because on that chocolate dip, there's a spot for my thumb. I can actually put pressure on that spot, which tighten my hand up. And now I have the release buried into my hand so I can actually roll it around. Now, if I'm back and I need to force fire, I just make a fist. I can tighten my fist up and make it fire. That's how much pressure I have. I have my trigger set really hard with no
Mhm.
travel. I don't want any travel because if I feel it move, what am I thinking about? The trigger. What
Yeah.
am I not thinking about? Aiming. So I
Right.
want it really hard and to pull through. So I never know when it's going to go off because it's hard. And I can put pressure on the thumb. I can put much pressure as long as I don't make a fist. I won't force it to fire. And that's how you get rid of target panic.
Yeah.
Stuff that you said. There's multiple different things you can do to get rid of it. But the
Sure.
biggest thing is quit thinking about pulling the trigger.
Right.
And I see a lot of them with the thumb release ones. They got that thumb, they got it back, and I see the thumb move to fire it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you switch from something with dexterity to something with no dexterity, try and fire your release.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I mean, and you said it best. I mean, your process and how you do it, and you took the button off of it, and the way that I have my stand handheld, and the position of where the thumb button is versus where anybody else is. I mean, it seems like no two archers are the same, right?
Right.
And fit that release to be yours, and the only time, I mean. There's two things that would cause me to quit to not hunt if I got to the farm and I was getting ready to go out to my tree stand, and it'd be two things. Well, the obvious thing was I'd have to have my bow with my arrows, right? But not having my release and not having my rangefinder, I'm going back home. Um, and you're talking to a guy that I shoot open class, so I have to judge my targets without a rangefinder, but when it comes to hunting and being fair to that animal that you're shooting at and being pinpoint and knowing, I use a rangefinder when I'm hunting because I want that ability to know and have the confidence that I'm executing a good shot on that animal, right? If I'm out there without it or my release, I'm going home. So,
Well, and
but
I'm a
no,
little different on the rangefinder because for many many years, I judge yardage without a rangefinder,
yeah,
and I got one a couple years ago, and it's kind of nice. But one of the things that I did was I had a 30-foot rope with me, 10 yards, and I had a loop on one end, and I'd stick it on the peg and down at the bottom, and then pull it out. There's 10 yards. I'd put a little marker down 10 yards, I'd take it off there. Okay, there's 20 yards. So I would use
yeah,
that as my rangefinder because I knew that was 10 yards. And of course, you learn over the years, how many steps are 20 yards. I've
yeah,
stepped it off, stepped it off, stepped it off. And I know what I do is I don't count every step. Like I'll start walking with my left foot. That's military training. I start with my left foot, right foot, left foot, one, two. And I know 11 and a half steps is 20 yards. I've
hmm,
counted it off so many times. Now, if you're walking up or down terrain, it's off a little bit. But walking on a flat, 11 and a half steps, 20 yards. 11 and a half steps, there's 40 yards.
yeah,
So I can step it off, and I'm just as accurate as I can be if I had a rangefinder. Now, the
yeah.
best way to use a rangefinder is you're up in a tree, range different spots so you know where it's ahead of time. Because
Absolutely,
when
yeah.
they come in at 10 yards or 20 yards, you ain't got time to grab a rangefinder.
No, No, know your
Yeah.
surroundings for sure. Yeah. Hit some trees, get an idea. And um, yeah. And honestly, the best buck that I've ever killed 2 years ago, well, it'll be 2 years ago this upcoming season, but um, I did that, right? I knew the gap that I had, and I knew it was 37 to 38 yards, and I knew where, my I shoot fixed pin. Well, I say that. This bow is a slider sight, but the bow that I was hunting with at that time had pins. So I knew it was my 40-yard pin. And so yeah, range ahead of time. And mind you, yeah, I know what 30 yards looks like. I know what 20 yards looks like from the ground, judging from the ground. But when you're elevated and you're in a tree stand, everything looks different. And know your short yardages, know what your bow does at 7 yards right underneath your tree. And I'll tell you the most common thing that I see people that miss, a buck of a lifetime or just in general a shot that's close. And this is just a tip that I learned, and a lot of people know it, but a lot of people don't, is know your short yardages. Um, my 7 yard pin is actually well, every bow's different, but most generally speaking, it's like shooting my 30-yard pin. And what does everybody do when a deer comes 7 yards, 5 to 7 yards underneath them? They put that top pin on them, right?
Yep.
And they shoot right over their back and wonder, how did I miss that shot? Well, they didn't know their short yardage. So the way, and you know this, I mean, Roy, you've been around forever, but you know when you're up close, I mean, you're with the way your bow and the arrow comes off of the rest, it's the trajectory is different up close yardage versus when you're out 20, 30, 40. So for that arrow at close proximity, it makes sense when you talk about it, but it doesn't make sense logically, like to our brains until you actually shoot it. But staying 5 to 10 yards away from your target, and I challenge you to do this, and it'll blow your mind. You have to use your 40-yard pin, for some bows. And every bow's different, every person's eye angle's different, so know what that is. So like you said, when crunch time happens and that 30 pointer walks right underneath your stand at 5 to 7 yards, you're going to make the shot on them. You're not going to shoot over their back. And we've all done that, right? But yeah, just a quick tip. Know your short yardages.
Well, and then I was at a 3D shoot one time. And there's a platform, so you're up, maybe 6, 7 steps. So you're not up super high, but you're up high enough. And they had a gator on the ground 5 feet from the stand.
Yeah.
And I knew at that time I had a printout. I had a program that I could run in. You put the heights between the arrow and your peep and how far it is. It will draw from your peep to your pins, the speed of your arrow, the weight of the
Yeah.
arrow, and all that. And they calculated everything. And I knew at 5 feet, I need to use my 70-yard pin.
Yep.
So I drew back, and because it was down, I started bending at the waist because that's your form. Bending at the waist, bending waist, and I bent over so far I'm depending on the rail to not fall. And when my 70-yard pin hit that spot, that's when I fired. And guess what? I nailed it.
Yeah.
Most people miss it because they'll say, "Well, I'll just aim down the arrow." Have you ever shot that way before? No. Well, I'll just aim down the arrow. Well, that's not the time to do it. So
No.
I knew at 5 feet, I need to use my 70-yard pin. So that's why I shot it, and that's where I got it.
Yeah.
Now, I was hunting, and the way I judge yardage is I'm up on the top of a hill on a tree stand, and the trail is down at the bottom of the hill. I don't know how far it was away, going down the hill. Um, but I judge yardage. I found the trail. I come up the tree that was level with me. I judged that tree. I judged that tree at 20 yards. So the deer come walking down this trail. That deer, by size, should have been 40 or 50 yards
Hmm.
because I was so high up in the angle. And I didn't, that's where I had any rangefinders. I knew that trail was 20 yards. I put my 20-yard pin on the deer and I got it because I knew that distance was 20 yards, even though my eyes told me it was probably 40 or 50. And if I would have done it, I shot clear over its back
Yep.
because I'd have picked, the 40 or 50-yard shot. And when you when you think about it, carpenters always know the 3-4-5 triangle. Not only sure what that is, but if you take one leg is 3, the other one's 4, the distance between two is 5. So if I'm, 40 yards up, the trail's 30 yards away. It looks like it's a 50-yard shot, but I have to shoot it for 30. And rangefinders now will compensate for that. So it says, oh,
Yeah.
this is a 20-yard shot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you just shoot based on a 20. But how do you figure that out if you don't have a rangefinder? You know, that's why I always ranged straight in a horizontal position to the tree that I knew come from that trail. And I
Yeah.
ranged that at 20. And I knew that that was a 20-yard shot all day long. I didn't care what the deer looked like because, all my pins, none of I'd have like one or two pins all fit on the deer, which tells me it's got to be a 40-yard shot. So if I used that to range find, I'd have been off. But because I knew the distance to the trail was 20, I didn't care what it looked like. I just had to find a spot to put the pin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and and like I said, the easy button, right, would be have a rangefinder with the angle variation, right? But yeah, no, that's awesome that you're able to do that. Like I said, I'm a ground judger, so whenever I'm elevated, it changes for me, right? And it makes it a little more challenging. But by knowing that about myself, like I said, rangefinder and release, if I don't have them, I'm going home, and I'll probably live and die by that until I quit hunting because it's just what I know that I need for myself. But no, and that's what makes it fun. And I mean, just learning how to judge yardage. It's a man, it's almost it's not something that you're gonna step out today and learn tomorrow, right? It's a period of time and a long period of time, right, before you perfect it. And certainly, certainly the easy button's the rangefinder. So if you're uncomfortable, and that's why we see so many people in the known class, nothing to bang against or talk bad about the known the known archer classes and ASA and everything, but they're stacked with numbers because it truly is, I can get my rangefinder out. I can put it on the animal, completely take that part of the game out. All I need to do is make sure my bow's on, draw my bow back, and execute the shot, right? So you're eliminating a major step out of the process. But it's a game, and knowing knowing to cut yardage here or cut yardage there because of the angle of the animal or the size of the animal, you know, larger animals versus smaller animals, and all that's a craft, and I still don't have it down. And I mean, I would love to be like Levi Morgan and be able to just, I mean, he's done it forever, I mean,
Yeah.
he's amazing. But speaking of Levi, he still uses a rangefinder when he hunts, so that tells you something.
Well, you owe it to the animal to make your best shot. And, as good as you are at range finding, um, you know, use a rangefinder. That way you take that guess out, because you're going to guess.
Yeah. And it's a pressure moment. I mean, you get I mean, I still get a feeling when I shoot a doe, right? Or I mean, yeah, who doesn't want to shoot a Boone and Crockett or, a huge buck, right? I mean, we all are chasing that dream, right? But yeah, you said it best. You owe it to the animal to execute a good shot. And when you're under pressure, I mean, I can stand out in the backyard and speaking of Levi Morgan, I can be Levi Morgan in my backyard. But when you're standing in front of people at a competition or you're shooting at a live animal, everything changes, right? And the more you can simulate that pressure and be prepared for it and know how you act under pressure. And like I said, cutting out the variables um, of ultimately not making a good shot, reducing your failures and giving yourself a chance for success is knowing how you respond to those situations. And you know, I've heard Levi say, keep score in everything you do. Like, I know tack events are great and fun now. And yeah, that's something you can do with your friends and shoot and go see beautiful places and mountain ranges and everything. But if you're not keeping score, what are you there for, right? Keep score, put the pressure on yourself, and the more times you put that pressure on yourself, the better chance you're going to have is when you're under pressure, you're going to succeed, right? So just something to think about. I mean, as always, have fun. I'm a proponent of having fun, but put yourself in situations to where you're a little uncomfortable but you're making yourself better so you can perfect that craft, right? So I don't know, just something I think about daily is how do I make myself better?
Yeah, I know. And some of the 3Ds we used to go to, a buddy of mine, we'd go to them all the time. And, they, if you have like 30 people, you got the top 10 scores one flight, the middle 10 the next one, and then the bottom three. So you could be first in your flight and your buddy could be last in his, and there's only like 1 point difference between the two of you,
Yeah,
because where it broke in there. Or you can even have the same score, just where they end up breaking them. So we would go to the 3D shoots, and we, of course, would fill out the cards. We didn't care what we placed in them,
sure.
because it was just kind of, if you're not first, second, or third in the top flight, then, who cares? Um, and the thing we wanted an average of at least 8 on every target. That meant we got a kill on every target.
Hmm.
If it was below that, we didn't like that very well. But the biggest thing was, did he score higher than, or did I score higher? It's who had to take it, who had to give it on the way home.
Hmm. Yeah.
You, you
Who's
know,
buying dinner, right?
yeah. Which one did better this time? Because the next time it might change. And we'd
Absolutely.
get out there, and we'd take a shot, and then take a shot. And it's like, what'd you shoot it for? What'd you shoot it for? And we'd kind of judge it that way. And most of those wouldn't lie use rangefinders anyway, because they're going for trophies and stuff. And it was
Yeah.
unmarked yardage. And if you were shooting just on your own and want to use a rangefinder, not turn your card in, you'd still fill out the card. But the best way to do that is judge the yardage, make the shot. If you hit it where you thought it was, good, you're done. If you didn't, range it. Where were you off? Were you
Yeah.
high or low? So that forced you to not depend on the rangefinder at the local tournaments and stuff. Because what's the biggest prize there? A little trophy or a plaque? you,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, who cares? You got a whole closet full of them. What's one more? Who cared?
Right.
That's why I was like when they did plaques, just give little stickers for each one. You know,
Yeah.
so I have a one plaque to hang up, and it's like, okay, I do this place, and instead of all these little trophies and different sizes, and and what do you do with all of them? They end
Yeah.
up in a box somewhere later, but that little plaque would be nice. So,
Yeah. For
yeah, that
sure.
was the thing we did, is we didn't really care where we finished in the overall tournament. We just cared, did I beat you or did you beat me this week? The next
Yeah.
week, it might be switched.
Yeah.
We're just in, the competition and was between the two of us, not, we didn't care about anything else,
Yeah. And
because that was the fun part.
absolutely. And I've always heard too, I mean, yeah, it's and having competition between your friends is fun, you can make it fun. But most importantly, like compete against yourself, right? So if you shoot, let's say you have a home range, right? And you shoot a score of 30 targets, I don't know. You shoot a 298, so you shoot two down. So next time you shoot it, you know, maybe your goal is to shoot a 300. Maybe your goal is to shoot a 310. Um, I've heard, I mean, one of my friends who did this growing up, I mean, he said the biggest thing that'll really get you in trouble when you're shooting is if you're trying to keep up with the person that's making good shots in your group, excuse me, and you're worried about their score. Always worry about your score and you doing your best because you may be shooting in your group. That guy that you're chasing after, he may be the top of the podium, the number one guy. And then everybody else may be 20 points behind him. And you think you're doing terrible, but he's just having a heck of a day, right? Um, And if you're out there to beat yourself or to do the very best that you can and not worry about anybody else, you're serving yourself a purpose because you may be 20 points behind him, but you might be in second place, right? And then all these other people are doing way worse, and you don't know what you have no idea what their scores are, right? So think of, just I take that with a grain of salt because you're like, I want to be competitive. I want to be the competitor that's not laying down to anybody, but at the same time, like compete with yourself. Make sure every time you shoot a same or similar course is that you're doing better. You're improving that score. And in the end, you'll be that guy that everyone's chasing, right? So, food for thought, but definitely have fun. So many people take this sport way too serious and they lose the fun part and they're like, how many sponsors can I get? How much money can I win? What prizes can I win? How many plaques? How many trophies can I win? Are you having fun? Because I kind of think when you start throwing money into it and you're having all this pressure from you need to perform because your sponsors tell you and all that, it almost takes the fun out of it if you think about it. So it becomes a job, and we
Yeah.
all know what jobs are, right? There's something that you're told you have to do when you have to be there. This is a sport. It should be fun and, keep it that way, right? So something to think about.
Yeah, that's always something when you're depending on your livelihood on you winning money at tournaments. Now then, if say you get sick or something, can't go to tournament, where's your money?
Right.
Because there is no insurance, or time off or vacation. It's like me as a contractor. If I don't work, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
So if I don't work, I got to figure out some other. Now I'm retired, so I at least have some coming in. But
Yeah.
still, that's a difference. So that's not as much as you want to have. But
Yeah.
um, that you don't want it to turn into something you have to do
Sure.
because you've got to do it and you got to perform at the top level. Because you're a professional archer, and which means you're getting paid to shoot your bow.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between local tournaments. You're an amateur. You're just
Yeah.
there. Um, Now, granted, as an amateur, you still want to win.
Sure.
But it's nice to come in and at that tournament you get first place or second place or and then do flights and it's kind of not as important for first, second, and third. But I can see why they do that because that gives the beginners a chance to compete against other beginners and
Right.
intermediates against intermediates and your top archers are competing against themselves. So that's kind of nice in the way they do that instead of being, well, I come in 30th or I come in, um, you know, 21st and, am I ever going to be number one? No. But now if you come in 21st, you're first in the third flight, if they split
Yeah.
it, amongst 10.
Yeah.
So at least now it gives you something to work for, and then eventually the next one and work your way up, and now you're getting trophies in your second flight, and then now you move up in the first one, and it gives you a progressive as you get better, something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Have fun. Have fun and
yeah,
enjoy what you're doing. And, I admire the guys that are pros and can do it day in and day out. And I mean, it's a grind, but it's not built for everybody and they're a pro for a reason. And, a lot of the pros that have been pros for a long time, um, they're very, very, how do I say this? Process driven. They're very focused. They're very good at their craft and they have a talent. And, but I bet if you asked every one of them, um, like what would be a desire that you could change? And they would say, well, I had fun when I was a kid. I had fun when I didn't have the pressure of being here and performing and trying to make money from it's if they're being honest, I think it comes down to a lot of the fun may not necessarily be there. So just always remember that, enjoy it and it's just a hobby. So
well, now if I could compete at the pro level, would I do it? Of course I would.
absolutely. in
Yeah,
a minute.
absolutely, I would. Because if you're, being a contractor, I only get paid if I work. And now to get paid more, I got to perform at a higher level. Because they're only going to pay you X amount per hour, based on what your skills are. As your skills get more and more desirable, you can demand more money. Well, same thing in archery. As you start getting in there, start winning a little bit more. As you perform better, your income's going to be higher and higher and higher. So it's basically the same thing,
Yeah,
except instead of doing what I do, I get to shoot a bow.
right, right. Yeah, can't beat that, right? And like I said, I admire the guys that have done it for years and continue to to succeed, right? And then just even guys that have gone from, pro to senior pro and someday super senior pro, like it's amazing that they stay in the sport that long. And you see guys that step away, a little bit and they come back, maybe family situations arise or whatever, but yeah, I mean, it's a grind and they are committed for sure.
Yeah, it's all fun, that you can learn from everybody. And I always like some of the sports that I've been in, when you're with somebody that's performing at a higher level than you, look at what they're doing and what are they doing different. And it actually kind of helps you perform at a higher level because they're at a higher level. It gives you something to look forward to, or strive to. And when you look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, then kind of imitate what they're doing. And in a lot of cases, you didn't go up, it's like, okay, what are you doing different than I'm doing that you're being able to shoot at this level and I'm struggling at this level? And sometimes, like we said, they'll sit there and it's like watch you shoot. It's like, oh, well, here, change this. And you change it. Oh yeah, that does really. And then you keep going. And
Yeah.
next time you pick up another little tip from somebody. Just
Yeah.
keep picking up tips. And then next thing you're having more fun. Because after all, what's the object when we get a bow in our hand? We want to put that arrow right in the center where we're aiming.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we talked about it earlier too, is you find that resource or that pro or that experienced archer and they give you those tips. I mean, they're 9 times out of 10, majority of the time, they're willing to give you those tips. And I feel like that's what makes this sport different is people are willing to try to help other people. Um, like coming from a baseball background, right? If I knew something secret that I did pitching or whatever, I wouldn't necessarily tell my competition that because they're my competition, right? But
Right.
it's just different with archery. I love it and it truly is like a family, an extended family type feeling. So
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to, say, like someone that's looking to start in archery that hasn't really started yet? Um, what kind of advice would you give to that person?
I'd say depending on their situation, but I would say go into it with a budget. So say, I've got $100, I've got $150, I've got $200. Go into it with a budget um, in mind of what you want to spend, and then find a pro shop, find a local pro shop like we talked about before. Walk in there and tell them, hey, this is my budget. This is what I want to accomplish. I want a bow. I want some arrows. I can get a target wherever, but to get me started, this is my budget. So that way they're not trying to sell you that high-end bow and waste your time, right? Um, get into something that fits you, the poundage is right, the draw link's right, and then find time. Like we all have to work, we all have school, whatever, if you're a kid or adult or whatever, but make time for it. And then if it's something that you really like and you really want to be committed to, um, find other people, find local clubs to shoot at. Um, Go there by yourself. I mean, if you go there by yourself, make friends. The best friend that you can have is the one that you're about to make, right? Go there and tell them, hey, tell the club president, hey, I'm new to this. I don't know anybody here. Are there any other kids or any other adults that are my age that I could shoot with? And people are going to always invite you to their, come shoot with them. Um, and then just, I think we talked about it, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but have fun, and let it put a smile on your face. Let it give you a reason to like, man, I'm looking forward to getting done with work or school so I can go home and shoot my bow. And then, when you start getting to the level of wanting to compete or feeling confident that you want to hunt with your setup, um, practice, 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 right? Be a sponge. Allow yourself to watch videos, but find the right people to watch, people that are credible, not just your fly by night YouTuber, but somebody who's a pro archer or somebody who's been in this industry for a long time. Again, utilize your resources, your clubs, your local shop, and really just get in there and get your hands dirty, right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We've all made mistakes, right? So it's kind of like the first day on the job. You're not going to know what the guy that's been there for 25 years, right? But you want to hook up with that guy that's 25 years to teach you everything that he knows. So you can kind of have those cheat codes, right? So same thing with archery. Utilize your resources and have fun.
Yeah, that's the big thing is just have fun and get started with somebody that knows what's going on and there's a lot of resources out there. Uh, there's lots and lots of videos on how to shoot. Now, some of them are good information, some of it's bad information. How
Yeah.
do you know? You don't know. Um, I've seen people tying on loops, add extra knots underneath. Like, well, I've went through some stuff and proved that you don't want that.
Hmm.
And you got to take it with a grain of salt. I was seeing this guy tying a loop, and then all of a sudden he tied another knot below it, and then put this loop on there, and it showed his knot could move up and down a little bit. Well, every variation you have in that is going to be different in your shot.
Yeah.
So you put that knot, and you don't. I've gone over this before, but you don't transfer 100% of the force from the knot to the tip if you have your loop knot on top and below the knot. That's just
Yep.
physics. And, that's incorrect. And if you look on the packages for the PSE loops, they don't tell you to tie a knot. They tell you to tie it exactly the way I tie it. And one thing that don't give you a clue when you tie on a loop, wax your string before you tie the knot. You will not untie that knot and it will not move.
Yep.
And when I tie them on that way, if you have to do anything with them, you cut them off, tie a new one on. You don't untie them because they're just too tight and they
Yeah.
don't move. You can rotate them around a little bit, basically wind them up to serving. But if you do more than one loop, you might as well take it off and do it over.
Right. Right. And I mean, for me, I want that loop to stay. I mean, I've got my soft knots inside of it and everything, but everyone's like worried, well, am I gonna crimp my center serving? Well, I hope that I do because I want that D loop to not move. I have no um let's put it this way, I have no plan of taking that off or repositioning it unless it needs to be replaced, like it starts
Right.
breaking down. But when I put it in there, I don't want it to move. I want it to be consistent, and that's why, I mean, I have put my soft knots in there. So like you said, I'm not getting knock pinch. I'm not getting the fluctuation up and down. It's in the same spot every time. So if it's missing, it's me. It's not my setup. So yeah, best
Yeah.
a good shooting bow is a well-tuned bow. That's the
Right.
short of it. So
Yeah. I've never used the soft knot inside. Um, and I've never
inside
had
your D
problems with
loop.
them pinched. Yeah. No knots inside. Now, if you put a knot above and below your knock, then that's okay because now
Yeah.
you're still pulling evenly. That's when you put one below or one above.
I don't know if you can see this. Let me bring it.
Yeah, yeah, you got a
This,
soft knot above and below.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Eh,
consistency wise, I mean, yeah, this shouldn't move. your D loop shouldn't move, but if it does ever so slightly, or you cut it, or something happens to where you've got to replace it, I can put another D loop on it and my knocking point's in the same spot, right? Every
Right.
single time.
That's the
Um,
advantage. You put a soft knot above and below it. So now the loop
yeah,
doesn't matter, and it's still pulling straight. So you're transferring it. That's when you tie
yeah,
only one below or one above. That's when your problems start.
yeah, yeah. And,
Now,
and there's some, I've heard some people, and these guys are pros, right? They'll just do, and I can't remember. I think it's just. Is it just the bottom one or just the top one? I guess it's just the
uh,
bottom one.
yeah, I've
Uh,
seen the bottom one.
just the bottom one, yeah. And I mean, okay, if that's what you want to do, but I don't want mine moving up or down. I want it, you know. And I mean, that's the other thing too is going all the way back to talking about custom strings is, you know, every arrow, every knock is going to be different, and you don't want one that's going to be like it's on there and it's not moving at all. You want it to be a little bit free. So if you buy your bow and you knock your arrow to the center serving and it's like almost knock pinch, on the knock itself, that center serving is probably too heavy of a diameter, right? So if you like with Phantom Bowstrings and any of your custom string makers, right, you can tell them I shoot this specific knock, and they'll know what size diameter center serving you need to make sure you have proper knock fit. So that's just another advantage. There's just small things like, a beginner archer's not going to know that, right? But over time, those little key things of how your arrow flies and how it comes off of the string and knock pinch and all of that stuff, it's like, man, that's overwhelming to hear what does all that stuff mean? But over time you figure it out. And anyway, so
Yeah. Now with the beyond parallel, the parallel and beyond parallel limbs, because that string is so sharp,
mhm,
now then that introduces a little bit different problems.
it
All
will.
my bows I've worked on has been the older ones where you
Yeah.
have the little bit longer axle to
Longer.
axle.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that mostly on the shorter bows, if you hook your release like below your knock and you draw back because that string goes at an angle to your knock, lots of times they'll pop off.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't want to be pulling below because it does put that string at a weird angle.
Yeah.
And if you tie a soft knot below only, now you're pulling more on the bottom one than the top. And now that string is going to start twisting in your knock
Yeah.
and it could make it pop off. That's why
Yeah.
you have one above and below. So now you have that perfect pull back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
It'll
went
it'll
through,
lift based on your
yeah,
angle, like you said.
yeah. And I proved all that when I set up a bow to shoot two arrows at one time. We went through a whole bunch of stuff. I've gone through it a couple of times in podcasting. Look at some of the other ones, but we set it up. It was not a center shot riser because we used the stick on rest, and we was able to by tying the loops correctly because we want to use a release and everything, and we proved the knot above the top one and a knot below the bottom one because you had to have a knock point, for the bottom arrow because
Sure.
otherwise it just moved, and that gave us a most consistent release. The spacing between the two arrows didn't vary more than about a 16th of an inch on every shot. Eighth
Yeah.
of an inch, 16th, I forget exactly what it is now. And because we'd measure it, same spacing. Now where they hit was depending on the shot, the placement,
Yeah.
but the distance between the two arrows never really varied hardly at all.
Yeah.
Like I said, 16th of an inch, eighth of an inch, that's basically same spot with two different arrows.
Yeah.
Now, by two arrows, it cut speed down in half because we had double the weight. But he was a motivational speaker and he wanted to get kids' attention by shooting two arrows and popping two balloons or something or other, and just
Yeah.
to get their attention, something
Sure.
different and unique. And that's where I proved to myself and everything and everybody else that is the best performance you're going to get out of your arrow.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this multiple times, but take a pencil, put it on the table, and push on the eraser straight towards the tip of the pencil. It goes straight. That is your loop tied above and below your knock.
Hmm.
Whether you have the soft knots above and below or just now that is that perfect push right behind it. Now, provided you have your center shot set and everything else set right.
Sure, sure.
But the pencil shows what happens. Now, take and turn your finger just maybe 1 degree. Instead of pushing towards the tip, push towards the edge of the pencil. And what's your pencil do? It turns.
Hmm.
That is what represents having a soft knot below only on your nock. That is what it's representing, a slight push. Now, are you putting 100% of your force into the arrow? No, because you're trying to rotate it. Now you're depending on the fletching to stabilize your arrow instead of sending it off straight. Now, by doing
Yeah,
that, you should be able to take a bare shaft or a fletched arrow and at 5 feet shoot through paper and get a perfect hole. Now, that's providing you have a good non-grip where it's putting in your hand correctly. You're not torquing your bow. You got a good clean release. Um, that can affect your tears as much as bow being off,
sure,
you
sure.
know. And then one thing you mentioned, draw back, let down. If you're gripping that bow like you're a baseball bat, you're actually torquing that bow sideways. Now, when you let down, because you're not perfectly lined up with the cams, now you can easily derail your string.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So if you're gripping that bow, then you don't want to be letting down because you have a good chance of derailing it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's why I teach, completely open hand, relaxed. Don't straighten your hand out, don't grip it, don't try and grab it. Just relaxed, completely relaxed hand is going to give you the most consistent release because you're not gripping the bow. If I don't have a sling on my bow and I'm in my tree stand, I'm picking up my bow off the ground. I
yeah,
don't hang on to it. And it's like it'd be out of my hand before I'd even realize that I didn't
yeah.
have a grip. That's why I use a sling. Now you see a lot of archers don't have a sling, but they got the thumb
The
string
little
that goes on your thumb to your index
thumb
finger.
and index. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But for hunting, yeah, that don't work too well.
No,
Just put a sling
no.
on.
Yeah, and your
And
target bows, you're gonna get that feedback, and a lot of target bows want to jump forward at shot, But
yeah,
yeah, I'm like you. No, you're probably not gonna use that hunting. So
no, I guess you can't just put your hand in there and go. And then the other thing on a sling, do not have it putting pressure on your hand, on your
yeah,
wrist, because now it's putting pressure on there, and a little bit of movement in that wrist is going to make a difference. You want it just loose enough that it's not on your wrist, but just tight enough so when it goes, that sling is going to grab onto your hand.
yeah, yeah. No, you're exactly right. And I mean, my friend, that had been doing target shooting and hunting since he was a little bitty kid, his dad put tacks on the front side of the grip of his bow and taped them on or however he put them on. So if he wrapped that hand around the grip and like you said, gripped it like a baseball bat, he was going to get poked. So he learned real quick, keep that open grip, keep that relaxed open grip. Don't touch the front of the riser. Because there's a penalty and it hurts. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say go to that extreme if you're teaching a kid,
No.
but yeah, for sure. Keep that relaxed grip. I tell people, if you want somebody to get out of your face, you're gonna tell them to stop, and then it's just stop, and then you just kind of you can touch these. I touch my index and middle finger just on the edge of the top of the grip, just as more of just like a place to rest my fingers, but these two bottom don't touch at all, right? And it's just, telling them to stop, But also by doing that and rotating your hand out, like we were talking about the string hitting your forearm, and you know this, but by
Yeah.
rotating out, it gives that string travel to where you're not gonna whack your arm. So for beginning archers, right, rotate that wrist out, to where you're not smacking your forearm. That's no fun.
Well, and I'll too, just stand there with your hands down at your side. And now
Yeah,
on your bow hand, just lift it straight up. Don't move nothing. And then just turn your wrist up. So for those watching, as I come up like this, just rotate the hand up. And that's in the position because this is straight up and down. The bow is going to go through your hand from the joint between the X finger. Basically follow your lifeline and
lifeline.
that
Yeah.
pad between. And those I'll ask a lot of people, do you have any martial arts training? before I really start because of the, yeah. And I said, okay, heel palm strike. Because what that does, that strike is not on the meaty part of the thumb or the little finger. It's that bony part you fit in there. And that transfers. If you hold your hand out and have somebody push on it, you feel it all the way up through the shoulder.
Yeah.
Now, if you push on the thumb, you feel it in the wrist because it's twisting your wrist. And if you're on the thumb, it twists the other way. Now, in martial arts, I did Hapkido. We use that fact to lock that wrist to either inflict pain or throw you with it
Yeah.
or make you fall down because, you know, those that know how to do it, we throw ourselves around so that we don't inflict pain on ourselves. It's an
Hmm.
escape. If you don't know, you just kind of curl up. But that is the force going through. And I teach a completely closed stance so the arm goes straight out. And I shoot my recurve the same way. I still don't hit my arm. I don't use an arm guard on my recurve
Yeah.
because I use the same grip as I did on the compound. And when you shoot, that arm should go straight to your target as the release hand comes straight back.
Yeah.
And now shooting a recurve is going to kind of curl around, but with a release, you're going to come basically straight back. And I tell this a lot on there because it's a good thing. Do take my loop materials in a big roll. So I had one a loop goes around your thumb, so you can go down through here, and now you're pushing it to your draw length, and now you hook your release to it, and now as you're practicing, you use that to fire with because it's that correct length, and you keep pushing forward and pulling back when it goes off. That string should go straight to your target.
Yeah.
If it doesn't go straight to your target, your form is off. Like you're using an open stance, as you're an open stance, you're pushing back this way because you're in front of you. When your hand, when that goes off, your hand goes off to the back,
Hmm.
which throws it off. Um, Now, if you don't have that right grip with a closed stance, you will hit your arm.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, you're going to hit your
Yeah.
arm. If
100%.
you don't have that proper grip with a slight bend in the wrist, like you was just showing, that
Hmm.
twist moves that arm out of the way, and now you're out of the way. Slight bend extends forward to your target, and that's how I always had one of those with me in my 3D rig when I was doing, 3D shoots, and I would practice that. And something was wrong in my form, and I didn't know what it was. So I get that string, and I'm practicing in between shots while everybody else is shooting. I'm practicing once it jumps off my hand straight. I got my form back, and now the next shot on the target is I'm back to my normal form. That's the way I can correct without actually shooting the bow, because well, you need to have some way to do it. And if it
Yeah.
hangs up on that thumb, your form is off. And you're torquing your bow one way. The best way to do is transfer 100% of your force straight to the bow, straight to your target.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the archery world's so filled with gadgets, and man, I can add this weight to my stabilizer and do this and do that and mess with this, my peep angle and this and that, and you're doing all this stuff. And, you know, my remedy to all that is go shoot your bow. You're spending more time on the bow press or putting weights on your stabilizers, trying to make sure everything's perfect. It'll be perfect if you just go shoot your bow. You'll get used to it. You'll adapt to it. Go shoot. The less time you spend behind, working on your stuff and tinkering is always for the better. So get it right, get it tuned, and then shoot and shoot and shoot.
Right.
So,
Yeah, just shoot. And one of the things we used to do when I was in high school, I was on a rifle team. And what we would do is we would be on target. We'd close our eyes, breathe in, breathe out, open our eyes. If we're still not on target, we'd move a foot or a knee or some just slight movement. Do it again until we could close our eyes, breathe in, breathe out, open our eyes. We're on target. Then the next time we'd breathe in, breathe out on target, squeeze the trigger. You can do the same thing in archery,
mhm.
the same process. So what you do is with your eyes closed, draw back, get to your target, say, okay, I'm on, open your eyes. If you're not on target, you might need to move something, change your form a little bit, and then let down, eyes closed, draw back. Now, if I'm on target, Now then, I can either let down or I can move my finger in to get to the firing position because I'm still naturally on the target. And now then just keep aiming and pull through.
Yeah.
So you can use that same technique that we used to use all the time, and that's been almost 60 or 50 years, 50 some years ago, was doing that. And
Yeah.
I still, use that same technique once in a while. You just go through, and if you're close enough to um, be safely shooting, or you've got somebody watching, close your eyes, draw back. I'm on target. Okay, next time, draw back, eyes closed, fire with your eyes closed, and be amazed because you're on target. Your body's in the correct position. You should have a good shot.
Yeah. Exactly. And you see those people that you know, reducing the amount of time, you made a good point. I think you said it without saying it, but reducing the amount of time that you can acquire your target and be on target and you're not having, so if you draw back and your pin is on the target and it's just from there keeping that, settling that pin and executing your shot. But you see guys that pull back and they're all over the place, trying to find the target in their scope and everything. And you're like, the time it took for them to do that, I mean, most shots typically, everybody's a little bit different, but most shots are in that 3 to 5 second range is what I've found is most effective for me at least. When you get into the 7 seconds, 8, 9, 10, 11, shot breakdown happens, right? That's a
Yeah.
lot of time to be drawn back and aiming and trying to execute a shot for me. Um, some people that shoot a hinge or back tension release, they're rotating through and it takes them longer to execute their shot. But if that works for them and they're good with that, okay. But for me, I know I'm most effective in that 3 to 5 seconds after I've settled my pin on the target, executing the shot. Um, so by knowing that, I know, okay, this is a real I'm struggling here. My pin's not settling. I need to let down. And again, we talked about it earlier. It's okay to let down. A lot of people think I'm drawn back, I've got to execute this shot. No, it's okay to let down. You might feel that way in a hunting situation, like I can't because the animal's going to see you if you
Right.
let down. But if we're talking target shooting, like it's okay to let down. ASA allows you to let down twice, and on the third drawback, you have to execute the shot. But it's okay. Like make your mind accept that it's okay. So
Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned 3 to 5 seconds because when I learned back tension release in '95, they said once you draw back, aim, start your process aim and of firing and aim. If you haven't gone off in 3 to 5 seconds, let down because something's not right.
yeah,
You didn't
and that's
start with
happened.
enough pressure or something isn't right.
Yeah,
Let down and do it again. And,
yeah,
that's kind of interesting. You said 3 to 5 seconds because that's
yeah,
what I was taught, back in
yeah,
95.
yeah. And I mean, anything beyond that, your brain starts. You start over aiming. Your brain starts. I'm not gonna say it does, but it's more likely that other thoughts are gonna creep into your head, like to make your shot break down, right? So, it's there's a mental side of it and there's consistency and yeah, we're talking about correct form and correct ways of doing things, but you can also do something wrong. And if you're able to repeat that 100,000 times the exact same way, you'll probably make a good shot. There's guys that are controlled punchers that shoot and everything in archery says to be against that, but they can execute that shot because they're comfortable with it. Their brains accepted it. Would I tell a new beginner to do what they're doing? No, but they've done it bad for so long, but they're so consistent with it,
Right.
right? But again, don't let me throw people off here. Don't accept bad habits, right? I mean, we're talking old men like us, that have been around forever that you're probably not going to break habits, but anyway, it's archery is just about how consistent you can be, and I think you could speak that volume for most sports, right? Is how consistent can you be? But shot execution, doing it over and over and over again until you're like blue in the face is what the old, blue in the face, doing it over and over again. So, but yeah,
But one of the things that you mentioned that, I want to expand on is like after you've been there for 3 to 5 seconds, now target panic is going to set in because now it's like, I got to shoot, I got to shoot. So you're going to start pulling. Now
right.
then you're creating target panic where if you'd have let down, refocused, draw back, concentrate more on your aiming, get into your shot process, start your process, aim, and it should go off.
Yeah.
So something you the mental game of archery. Something got in your head as you was doing your process
Yeah.
that didn't leave in time and let down and take a couple deep breaths and then just mentally go through your process, and then you should be just fine then.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And I shoot with a guy, I try to shoot with him a lot, him and his son, but one thing he does that really stuck with me is when his shot process is not going off like we just talked about in the time that he feels comfortable. He verbally says it out loud, let down, and he does it. Um, because a lot of times in our brain we go, don't let down. Don't no. Shoot, and you end up making a bad shot, target panic. But he's sitting there and he verbally says it, let down, and he does it. So I thought that was kind of cool. That's his process, and that's how he tells himself, okay, I'm struggling to get this shot to go off, let down. So just an idea.
yeah, that's something to think about too, and figure out what your process is and do it every time.
Yeah.
If you get ready to draw back and you tap your foot or something, that indicates start your process, just tap your foot every time. It doesn't matter what you do. I have a little loop that I put my lower limb in or lower cam in, and I start using it when I'm hunting. So now even when I'm doing target, it's sitting in there. For
Yeah.
one, I don't have to hold the weight of my bow. Once I discovered that, it's like, oh man, my arm's not near as tired because I'm not having to hold the thing all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave it hanging. So I can set it in there and basically rest my arm on it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
I grip it, rest my arm on it or whatever. And then that way you've got this process. It doesn't matter what your process is, as long as you do the same thing consistently. We've talked about this a couple of times here, but
Agreed.
be
Yeah.
consistent with your process. And, if you're struggling, ask somebody. On my 3D rig, I have my NFA instructors patch on there, just figuring, if somebody's having a problem, you see the instructor patch, they can ask me. Because I don't
Yeah.
go around saying, hey, I can make it shoot better, which I can. I maybe I'll have to look for little bitty minute details, but pretty much now with the videos on your
Sure.
cameras, you can do that. And with my video editing software, I can go frame at a time. I just bring it
Yeah.
in there and go frame in advance at one frame at a time. It's not like I started when I first started as VCR tapes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the only way you could record it because phones didn't record.
Yeah.
You
Kids
you
nowadays don't, they're like VCR tapes. What are those?
yeah. Yeah, start out with most of my teaching was I'm going to watch you shoot and try and see it. I'm going to see one thing at a time and try and correct one thing, and I go look for something else, look for something else. Now with the videos, especially the phones, uh, most of your phones have better cameras than a lot of your digital cameras. Unless you're
Right.
spending $10,000 for a digital camera, your phones have better quality pictures.
Yeah.
And even if you're recording off of a laptop, the cameras in a laptop are not very good. They're a little bit blurry. Now, I have a Logitech 920 camera that I'm used because it's so much better, clear pictures,
Sure.
and I'm doing this all the time.
Yeah.
So I wanted a decent camera, and then I actually talked through the uh, camera. Then of course I had headphones on so I can listen. It's a little easier to hear than over the speakers in the room. And
Sure. Yeah. No,
it's
funny story about that too is, I had my buddy just filming me for content because again, I shoot for a few companies, their pro staff and everything. And this was, oh, I want to say it was probably early February, getting the target bow out, getting ready for Foley in Alabama. It's always at the end of the month in February. And, we have the disadvantage being in Missouri with it being cold, you can't go outside and shoot. So shooting at an indoor range and I'm like, film me, so I've got some content. So long story short, he sends me the videos after we're done, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, something's not right here. So I sent it to a friend, and immediately he's like, your draw length's like a half inch, probably a quarter inch to a half inch too long. And I had two friends tell me immediately. And I'm sitting there like he's telling me, you're like shaking. Like I know we're probably not in shooting shape, but you're shaking like crazy while you're shooting. Well, and this is a good example, right? My draw length was a half an inch too long, and I had shot that way with that bow last year, but something maybe I can't I've changed my release a little bit. There was something that caused me for it to be too long. So shortened it a half an inch, and here I am today shooting that a half inch shorter, and it feels good. It does well for me. And had I not had my friend film me for content and got those videos, I would have never known that, right? So, yeah, we all want to be on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube famous or whatever, but honestly, have a friend film you so you can see what you're doing and or a coach, or somebody and show you physically this is what you're doing and then you see it, you know how to correct it. So, you brought that up and that's a good example. Like I'm nowhere a professional, but by doing that, I caught that. Otherwise, I don't know that I would have been able to catch that draw length being just a half an inch too long. So,
Yeah, it can make a difference. I know before I in '95 before I went to the shooter school um, to learn back tension release and to become a coach, um, I was shooting 32-inch draw length because the first bow I bought of mine, I went to the shop and here's this one, drew it, and it was 32-inch draw length, drew it back, and he says, "How's that feel?" Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never shot a
yeah.
compound hardly at all. I shoot the bear whitetail too, is my brother's. And I was like, oh, that feels good. It's 32-inch draw length. So later on, I'm shooting it and it ended up breaking. The riser broke in half. So 32 inch and High Country bought it was American Challenger was the bow. High Country bought them out. So now they're sending me High Country in 32-inch draw length. In the meantime, I'm looking for something while I'm waiting for that to come in because it was like 2 weeks for hunting season. So then I found my first PSE and I thought it was 32-inch draw length is what I needed. So that's what we got. And then I went down, it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night for the shooter school. And Friday night, the first thing he did is check our draw length. He said, you're 29.5-inch draw length. Your bow has to be 29.5 inches before Saturday night, or it doesn't do any good to take the class. So I'm going around, you can't get new cams for them. So we're getting strings and cables, and we got it down to 29.5.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, this feels short because, well, it's 2.5 inches shorter than I was used to
Yeah.
shooting, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then of course, I'm firing with my index finger. So that was extra long too. So I'm like way back here stretched
Yeah.
out. And so we finally get it down to 29.5 inches. And I go through shooting and, it's like, it feels short, but I'm paying at that time like $300. This is in '95, which is a good chunk of money
Yeah.
for a 3-night class. And so I'm shooting, we're learning the back tension with the eyes closed and all that kind of stuff. And then after a while, I got used to it. I shoot 29 now.
Yeah.
I'm half inch, my draw length's 29.5. I shoot 29 because that little extra half inch on my arm puts just enough more bend in that arm and I still can push forward with it. I can wear my big heavy parkas in the wintertime and I still don't hit it with my string, that
Hmm.
extra half inch. And it's everything else feels pretty good. And And like you're saying, taking a video or stuff. Here
Yeah.
not too long ago, I videoed myself shooting. My wife was videoing me, and I was like, that ain't what I'm telling people to do. Look, I see this like this isn't something's not right.
Yeah.
And then I noticed on the bow, it's still I don't really use a lot, but I kind of use it for 3Ds, and it was kicking back. The top limb was coming back, and I really hadn't paid much attention because I didn't really pay much attention to it. And it's like, okay, I need to get more weight because I just had a little bit short stabilizer basic to um, hold the sling on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I was on there for. And it's like, okay, I needed a little bit more weight on it because I still haven't set that bow up to shoot any better. It's like I had one to make strings for it, and I got the strings finally made. And
Yeah. No, and for me, like same, we're about the same draw length. That's funny. 29 and a half is what I shoot hunting bows, right? So that bow I was showing you, it's a Mach 34 PSE. So most generally 34 and under, I'm 29 and a half, depending on the bow, depending on the cam. But most generally, target bows, if they're 35 inches or 40, whatever, 38, um, 29. So I'm a half inch shorter. And it's the ATA of the bow, it's the string angle, it's all of that. So it changes. And so, you know, just because you're 30-inch draw length on a Matthews doesn't necessarily mean when you pick up an Elite or a Bowtech or a Hoyt or a PSE or whatever it may be that you're the same thing. Like you said, every bow's different. So keep that in mind too for beginning archers.
yeah,
Like make it fit you, that bow fits you, not, oh, I'm going in there thinking I have to be this draw length because that's what they told me I was when I had my first bow. No, it could be different. So
yeah, it gives us a place to start,
yeah,
and measuring the wingspan divided by what 2.5 or something like
yeah,
that is kind of the rough. But we had a different one that we used, wingspan, and then we'd start off. There's a number, I forget what numbers you subtract from it, and then for every inch of wingspan, you had a half inch draw length because that's the same as going over here and measuring. But that gives us a good start.
yeah,
And when I was using that, I had it marked out on the wall. So just, okay, put your finger here, here. Okay, that's your draw length. That's where we start. And I found several that was shorter than that. I never did find anybody that had to have longer. So it's kind of at the long side of your draw length,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
gives a good starting point. And then I always found shorter was always worked better for most people than that. But that at
absolutely.
least it's only a starting point.
Yeah, and when it's too long, like I said, you see characteristics of their heads cocked back,
Yep.
or their shoulders aren't level. It's they're having to compensate. They're having to get behind that string, or your bow arm. For me being right-handed, it's my left-handed arm. Um, you feel wore out. You shoot not even a dozen shots or whatever, and you're like starting to shake, because you're reaching to try to get to that draw length. So again, just because you think, oh man, there's a lot of people out there that draw length equals speed, right? So they start shooting a bow that's too long for them because they're chasing a speed number. Don't do that. Shoot a bow that fits you. If I see you cocking your head like this, I'm gonna say something because I can't stand it. But like
Yeah.
because we want our peers to shoot to their highest, potential. And if a bow doesn't fit them, you can't do that, right? So if you're looking for speed, shoot a lighter arrow or something to compensate for it, right? Or increase your poundage if you can. Not necessarily, but draw length is like you gotta have it right. So
Right. Well, and I had one guy that come in when I worked over at Bass Pro. He'd come in, and at 20 yards, he was grouping, maybe 6 inch was his group at 20 yards. And I worked with him. So, okay, start with draw length's too long, which is normally the case. Form is wrong. Technique is all wrong. I spent 45 minutes with him. Now he's grouping 1.5, 2 inch groups in 45 minutes just by
45
shortening his
minutes.
draw length and
Yeah,
fixing his form.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, you're
I've
welcome.
done that many times.
Yeah,
It don't take long with your formulas. Your drawing's too long and your formula's wrong. It don't take but half hour, 45 minutes to get you grouping decently.
yeah. Well, you're fighting the bow, and more likely, if it's long, you're pushing one way or the other. Probably if you're right-handed, you're probably pushing left. If you're left-handed, you're pushing right.
Right,
So you're not that bow's not plumb to your target, and it's going to cause you to have left misses and everything. And it just it's more doing more damage than good, like you said. And
right.
you can fix it in 45 minutes. Why didn't you do that to begin with? But some people don't know, and that's them learning. But to make your draw length long on purpose, and making those D loops that are like yay long, like
Oh,
come on, don't spend the money to get the other mod or the different cam, like put in a long D loop. Come on, don't do it.
I cut my D loops. I got one end burn on it on the string. I cut it 4.5 inches, burn the other half, and that's how I do them. Now,
Yeah,
if you got like your soft knots above and below, you'd probably have to go 5 inches because you wouldn't get it on otherwise because
yeah,
it's too far apart.
yeah.
So I do mine that, and it's just long enough. By time it's amazing how much that stretches out once you start putting pressure on that loop.
Oh
And
yeah,
I put the knock in there, and I've got the top loop tied, the bottom loop tied. I use the levels to make sure it's plumb and level, and then I start pulling on it, and then with the knock in there, so it tightens down against that knock, so there's no movement in the knock at all. There is actually no movement, and I pull them, as hard as I can, and it's amazing how much more that stretches out.
oh yeah,
Now, most of my releases are just either a hook or just a small jaw. If you have one of the calipers that have big heads on them, you'll have to go a little bit longer loop because you can't get the release on there.
sure.
But most all of them that I use and most of the releases I stock for the people to use are they can use that small loop like that.
Yeah,
And if you use the longer loop, now that might move that handback, your anchor point's going to move back, and I start moving the anchor point back, and now then you don't get a good solid anchor. You're anchoring on the soft part of your jaw
yeah,
instead of the hard part of the jaw, and now you start getting the inconsistencies, and
yeah,
I guess what we talked about multiple times. It's that setup.
yeah.
Uh,
The other thing
it's
too,
got to
like
fit you.
yeah, exactly. The other thing too for like fitment and consistency is, and I had to learn this, over years, but for a beginning archer, make sure the tip of your nose not presses into your string, but touches your string. So there's so many different things that people have, like nose buttons or kisser buttons and all that. But if you're drawn back and the tip of that string touches the tip of your nose, that's for me like finding that anchor point, finding that just barely touching the tip of my nose. I know that I'm in the same spot every time. And, I've heard it and you probably heard it too. If you're shooting up or you're shooting down or whatever, you can't necessarily go off of like where your knuckles are in your jaw because that's changing depending on if you're shooting a 100-yard shot or a 10-yard shot. But if your string is always touching the tip of your nose, not slamming it in there, but just barely touching it, um, that's your consistent anchor point. And keep that in mind, and then centering your peep to the housing of your scope, because you may draw back and you see through your peep and your scope housing, you see half of it or the bottom half or the top half or left or right. Make sure it's centered. And those are all things that over time, consistency and doing it over and over again, you don't even really think about it. You just do it, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, I can remember Roy, the first big buck that I ever shot at, I think I was seventh or eighth grade in Illinois on our family farm, and I missed it. It was a like 38-yard shot. I mean, that's money now, like that back then it seemed like that was 100 plus yards. But one, I wasn't practicing that distance, and then two, when I drew my bow back because I had buck fever, I didn't even look through my peep. I just drew back, had no sense of anchor. Again, I'm very green, very rookie at this time. Drew back, didn't even look. didn't even find my peep, and I've heard adults tell me I missed a deer. I loaded another arrow the deer stood there. Let me shoot at it again. I missed again. And then the third time, the third arrow, by the time I shot the third arrow, it took off. And then I realized I never looked through my peep. So there again, you're under pressure and all of those things you thought you knew, but so have your anchor spot, have the tip of the string touch your nose, be consistent, um, and do it over and over and over again, to where it's just not even something you think about, right? But I don't know. Hopefully that's a good tip.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that once. I shot at a deer and completely missed and pulled up my field tip and picked out a leaf and hit it. And like
Yeah.
I didn't forgot to aim.
Yeah. And I'm saying, and I know I'm saying peep sight, but I'm talking compound, obviously
Right.
you being more in the traditional word, you don't have peep sights that you're looking through, but find that anchor point that's consistent. And the tip of my nose is what works for me. And I don't shoot a kisser button. I don't shoot a nose button. I just know where my hand has to be in relation to my jaw, like, you said, the hard part of your jaw. And for me, it's these two knuckles embedded like in the hinge of my jaw. And it'll fluctuate depending on the yardage, right? But finding that and then the string coming across the tip of my nose and centering that peep to the housing of my scope. So that
Yeah,
works
that
for me.
that peeps you want your like you said that you want the your sight to be centered in that circle that's
Yeah.
in your peep. And I have a kisser button and then a peep and then of course it touches my nose. And if I'm using my handheld, I anchor differently on my face, a little bit different because my hands turn different. Now, if
Yeah.
I'm using my caliper, I take the um, index finger, that bone goes at that pressure point below the ear on the back
Yeah.
of the jaw. That's where that anchors. But when
Yeah.
I have the handheld, because my hand turns, now then it's basically the ring finger that's in that spot,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't punch in as hard because it's, well, it's smaller. So it
Yeah.
won't fit in there. But because I have those 3 points of reference, I don't care what this hand does
Right.
because I have those three references, and depending on which one I use.
Yeah.
I use the handheld early season. When it starts getting really cold, I go to the caliper or the handheld because it has a hook on it, and I can find my loop and hook up without looking at it.
Yeah.
My carter locks onto my loop,
Hmm.
so when I'm up there, I don't walk around with it hanging on there because I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
So when I'm up there, I'll hang it on there because then I can find my string without looking, slide my hand down to my release and draw, and I can look at deer. Because every time I've looked down to hook up a release or something, look back up, the deer's looking at me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I don't need to look at it because I can find it. Because
Yeah.
on the handheld, I have a one of those knitted gloves that has basically, most of the hand is all gone. So just a little warmth on the back of my hand is
Yeah.
about all I have because I have to feel my trigger. Because if I don't, I can't shoot it because just putting in it goes off. And
Yeah.
then on the caliper one, I just need the index finger out. I can have glove on everything else because I just need the index finger out so I can feel the trigger.
Yeah.
And now,
Yeah.
now I can keep my hand a little bit warmer. I can keep my hand in my pocket, and
Yeah.
I can keep my hand in my pocket no matter which one I have. But I don't want to when it's up here in Nebraska, wintertime, we can have freezing or below, and I don't want
Sure.
to grab, a 32-degree piece of aluminum and put it in
Yeah.
my hand. It's going to be
Yeah.
cold, and it might be wet
Agreed.
enough; it might stick to it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I go to that, and then I carry
Yeah.
another handheld with me as a second backup. It's I think it's a True Fire. When I had my store, they said they had this handheld one that half the price of the Carter. Then it was like 150 bucks my cost. This was like 75 bucks my cost, something like that. Or I sold it like I think sale price is 75, where the other one's like 200. So they sent it to me to see if I liked it. Well, it's okay, but the travel, it's got the jaws that open up. The travel on that trigger is just way too long.
Yeah.
It moves, 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 and then it finally goes off. where the Carter, there's no movement.
Hmm.
And like, like I think you said use a stand.
Stand.
They don't have a lot of travel in theirs
No.
either. And, that's what you don't want is to feel your trigger moving. I could use it
Yeah.
if I had to as a backup. I could use it, but I don't like to because it's just not that good.
Yeah.
And, I don't recommend it just because it's, for the cost it was then. Of course, that's 20 years ago,
Sure. Sure.
So, yeah, that's
No,
where
but
I
you,
always say spend the money on your release.
yeah,
Cheap on the bow, cheap on accessories. Buy just the low end everything, but spend your money on a good quality release. A lot of times you want to spend half or more of what you're spending on the bow just on a release because that you're not going to need to change, and that's your trigger. And if you don't have a good one, you can't get a consistent release. The rest of the
I,
stuff you can work with.
yeah. Well, and the release too. I mean, and I'll even say, I mean, maybe a little bit different than how you see it, but like the release, you're going to use that for years. It's
Yes.
not one of those things you're going to. I know there are people that buy all kinds and try different kinds or whatever, but when you find one you like, you're going to keep it, right? I mean, you shoot Carter releases. I mean, they've been around forever. They warranty even the ones they don't even produce anymore, right? So, um, you find what you like, you keep it, sort of thing. Same thing with like a good sight scope combination. For me, like I want to be able to have something that is going to last too. So I use a lot of like Trueball Excel products, for my sight and scope and everything. And I mean, Rest, I love QAD. I feel like they're an awesome company. They've been around forever and very reputable. Warranty that, unlike anything, if something goes wrong, call them up, they'll replace it. Um, I don't skimp on my accessories because I want them to perform for me over and over again. But
Right.
but for a beginner archer, I understand what you're saying. Make sure there's certain things you want to not go cheap on, right? Release being one of them. So the other thing is, which I didn't mention this, but when I learned when I was 14, I had a cheap handheld caliper style release, and I was at full draw, and I was not pulling to shoot. It just the tension of it on the string, it went off, hit myself in the mouth, and chipped a couple teeth. So another good reason to have a good release. Not a cheapie, I think I spent like 25 bucks for it and it was not great. So, but live and learn, and I was still trying to figure things out. But no, um, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but ultimately, like, don't feel like you got to dump a bunch of money in just to get started. But as you start, um, as it becomes your thing and archery is your thing, then you can always buy, sell, trade, build up, and get something that you really want that will last. So.
Yeah, start with the release, and then if you want to, as you shoot for a while and you want a better rest, then buy better rest.
Yeah.
Want a better sight, buy a better sight, and eventually you're gonna say, okay, I want a different bow. Well, keep your old rest sight, put them back on that bow, and now you have a second bow that you can
Yep.
use for whatever. And now move your stuff over. You can always move rest and sights over.
You got your
Releases
accessories. Yeah.
releases is the thing you want to do. Um, Now, I actually had a release fail. It actually failed. The head broke off,
Oh,
and I'm drawing my bow back at 70 pounds, and I'm about halfway back, and the head broke off. Now we end up finding the head down about 20, 30 yards down the range. And of course, it sent the arrow up into the ductwork in the range. And yeah, you'd never guess what the brand of this release was. Fail safe. That was
ah,
the on the release. Fail safe. And
nice.
and I have two of them. And a machinist friend made the part that failed. It
Yeah.
it was the part that screwed on, and it was had the part the head fastened around. It's just so thin it just ripped out. It just
Wow.
broke in half. and then Michelle's friend made it a new part, so at least it works. But I'm not going to use it. I got much better releases, but
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
yeah,
you've got a
fail safe is
Carter.
the brand, and it failed.
That's funny. You got a Carter chocolate. Yeah, that's a good one that's been around for a long time. So,
I've had that one for 20 plus years,
yeah.
and I
I
actually had
really
my
liked.
my
Oh, go ahead.
first Carter I had ended up losing it in the forest, but I dropped it one time and broke the trigger off.
Wow.
It cost me a whole $5 to ship it back to Carter.
Yeah, as I say, they're good about
That was the
placing
postage.
stuff.
And I told him it's like because normally they'd have put the knurled knob back on. I says I don't use the knurled knob. Don't even bother putting it on or sending it back. It come back without the knurled knob because I the one I have now it's in a drawer in the package I got it in because I don't use them because they're just in the way.
Yeah,
And because I don't use them because I don't need them. And now, if I held them slightly different, I probably would. If I had it a little bit looser in my hand, more at the fingertips, I'd need that knob to get back in to get some pressure on it. But because I buried it into my hand, I pretty much got a fist around it because that's how small it is. How
yeah.
tight I have it in my hand, and I put my thumb on pressure on it, and I can just draw through.
Pull through.
So I
Yeah,
don't need the knob would actually be in my way.
yeah.
So I don't use those, but
I shot let's see, what was it? Their Target 3 or Target 3 Plus
yeah,
for a few years, and I really liked it. I just that three finger. They have a three and a four, but the three just fit me better. And like you said, I could kind of crunch my hand down, and by doing that, it just the pressure would make it go off, and shot that really well. Just for whatever reason, like anything else, changed. Just tempted to change, but
yeah,
I had no issues with it. So
yeah. Now the handhelds I don't recommend for beginners because there's
right,
no way to safely draw back. You just got to remember take your thumb off and pull. And like
yeah,
the hinges, you got to really put pressure on the index finger because if you put any on the little finger, it's going to go off on you.
yep,
I've shot them a few times, but you know, nice thing about the caliper is you put your finger behind. It's not going to go off until you're ready to put your finger on it and go. So I recommend that for beginners.
yeah,
Now, once you get into it, now then we can look at a different one. But
for sure.
I have Scott and Carter releases. Stan makes good releases as well. True Ball,
True
they
ball,
make
right?
some really nice releases. I actually talked to one of the owners at True Ball here, I think a year ago or something like that. And I learned a lot about what they had because I didn't really realize, some of the releases they had, and they've got some really nice ones as well,
Yeah.
good quality. Um,
Another
you know,
another company that's come on the scene the last few years is B3. They make a lot of good handhelds and just caliper releases too. So pretty affordable. Kind of have wide ranges, So just if someone's listening and they're looking at brands, those would be four or five we mentioned there that would be really good to start with. So
yeah, yeah, and I'll put some links to that in the description so it makes it easier for them to find. And I'll put them into the bloodline and the Phantom Bowstrings. I'll put links in
yeah,
there for that, and makes it easier for people to find stuff when they're looking at stuff. We talk about something, and uh, if I didn't have AI doing the text, I would remember half what we talked about.
yeah, yeah,
So
no, and if people, find me on social media, I'm just um I know Matt Clark's a common name, but on Facebook, on Instagram, and Instagram is just Matt underscore Clark underscore 22. So feel free to follow me on there. I'm pretty responsive to messages and everything. So if you have any questions about, anything to do with Phantom Bowstrings or anything that we've talked about today, again, we're all part of one big community. So happy to answer any questions and help someone that's a beginner or someone that's been doing it a while. It doesn't matter, right? Feel
yeah,
free to shoot me any questions. So,
yeah, we'll definitely do that. And um, we've been chatting for quite a while now, so it's time to move on, I think. And thank everybody that's been listening or watching this far. If you made it this far, really appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, like I said, contact Matt. I'll leave some contact information for him. Contact me. Join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. There's a lot of good information you can have in there. If you want to have if you want to have, I mean, if you have a problem and want to get an answer for it, just let us know. Post a message in the group, and somebody get back with you. I try to look at all those and answer all of them I can anyway. Some I don't have expertise on, so kind of let the rest of the group fill in on some of that expertise I don't have. But yeah, it's been great talking to you. Had a lot of fun, learned a lot. It's always fun talking with archers and hearing their viewpoints, and what they like doing and how they're set up, and their advice to beginners. And after all, if you're a beginner, get with somebody. That's all I can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Roy, has been great talking to you too. And yeah, this was first podcast I've done, so great experience. And yeah, looking forward to maybe I'll come back someday, right? Maybe we'll have some
Yeah,
more questions for each other. So
yeah,
thank you for the invite and having me, and the time you spent chatting this evening.
yeah. It's My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Arch Talk 101. And if you want to watch it, join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, or go out to my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. If you just want to listen to it, you can always go out to audible.com and listen to it there. Otherwise, you can go out to Spotify and or else you get podcasts from, and listen to it. And remember, if you have any questions, the only dumb one is the one you haven't asked yet. Yeah, because once you ask it, we'll answer it.
That's right.
And thanks for listening and watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.